Okay, so good evening, everybody. Obviously, a lot has happened since the weekend, and the Mason Greenwood situation is what is dominating the headlines. We could discuss the transfer market. We could discuss Frank Lampard going to Everton and becoming the new Everton manager. But what's come out over the weekend concerns the Mason Greenwood. Further information is now being forthcoming. The police have arrested him on more charges, should I say? Um, and they've also been given an extension to question Mason Greenwood until I think midnight tomorrow night. So the police have been granted an extension by a judge in regards to holding and questioning him for a further 24 hours. Not looking good. EA Games and Nike have withdrawn their sponsorship um, of of him, and Manchester United have suspended him until further notice, so he will not be training or playing anytime soon. So that story has just been dominating the sports headlines at the moment. Rafa Nadal winning the Australian Open. That's his 21st major title, so that's a new record. So he's now ahead of Federer and Djokovic. Obviously, a question mark whether Djokovic will play in any of the majors this year. And of course, I think Federer is slowly winding down his career. Be interesting to see how long those guys continue to play tennis at the highest level. But the Mason Greenwood situation is just dominating the news the last couple of days. And with the police being given that extension to question him further and then arrest him on other charges, is not looking good in regards to his situation. Um, and the fact that over the last few days, Nike have withdrawn their sponsorship confirmed that EA Games have pulled him from their video game series, FIFA. Um, so he's been withdrawn from the video game series with immediate effect. Um, so that's a developing situation. It's looking highly likely he is going to get charged. Police don't normally ask for extensions to question unless they're got a lot of evidence to charge further. So yeah, I think Mason Greenwood's career is done. Quite frankly. In other news, the Six Nations kicks off this weekend, and of course, Owen Farrell is out for England with that ankle injury. Could this be a blessing in disguise for England? We are 2 years out from a World Cup. Does this force Eddie Jones's hand into changing their style of play, for example, getting players game time um, within the squad? Obviously, Scotland have got a lot of uncapped players in their squad as well. So the Calcutta Cup clash this weekend is looking quite tasty. With a lot of inexperienced players are going to be involved for both teams. So there's something, if you follow rugby union, the Six Nations obviously there, brewing around the corner. Obviously the FA Cup fourth round weekend as well. So there's a lot of sport on this weekend, and also in Australia. When it comes to the NRL is facing a lot of criticism for the Latrell Mitchell situation, where he's allowed to play in the Charity Shield, but he's not allowed to play in the Maori Indigenous All Stars game. This is following on from his ban last season, where he was suspended for a late hit on Joseph Manu, which resulted in Joseph Manu having a severe facial fracture. So the NRL are facing a lot of heat for his suspension from play, where he's allowed to play in one game but not the other. Is it because the Charity Shield is not classed as a competitive game? It's classed as a pre-season game. Um, so there's that. So if you're an NRL fan, there's that going on in the background. But yeah, there's a lot going on at the moment. In regards to let's just have a look, see how much, because Manchester United have released several statements. EA Games have released a statement, or EA Sports, their game, or part of their sports division, have released a statement. Nike have released a statement as well in the last few days in regards to the Mason Greenwood situation. So let's just have a quick look at what's being said there. Also, it's the second highest transfer window for oh, here we go. More players are going to be out for England. Forwards Courtney Laws and Johnny Howe have been ruled out of England's Six Nations Open against Scotland on Saturday. So Laws, who was meant to be captaining the side in the absence of Owen Farrell, is also out. Um, there's obviously issues in regards to who is going to be England captain. England are without Farrell, Johnny May, and Anthony Watson for the tournament. Tuilagi and Salmon, who are likely to be available later in the Six Nations, but they're also missing. And so England's team to face Scotland is expected to be announced 11:30 Thursday morning. So that's an interesting one. That's just broken as well. So we don't know who's going to be England captain on the day or for the tournament. What else? So the Mason Greenwood situation. Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood has been further arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and making threats to kill. That's the new charge against him. He was arrested on Sunday. Great Manchester Police said it had been granted more time to question him after having the previous extension on Monday. The questioning period has now been extended till Wednesday. So normally the police will not do that unless they have significant new evidence. So he's looking very, very likely to be charged with one, if not all, the above offences. Manchester United have said he will not play until further notice. He will also not be allowed to train or take part in any club activities. Great Manchester Police said the player was arrested on Sunday after the force became aware of online social media images and videos posted online. It said magistrates have granted a second extension. This is where EA Sports said the forward had been removed from FIFA products. A statement agreement had also been removed from active squads in FIFA 22 and also suspended from appearing in FIFA Ultimate Team Packs and Ultimate Draft. So any game in which Mason Greenwood has appeared, but in the FIFA franchise, he's been withdrawn from all of them, including some of the older titles. Nike has obviously suspended its sponsorship of him, or actually cancelled its sponsorship of him, torn up its contract with him. And they have stated, "We are deeply concerned by the disturbing allegations and will continue to closely monitor the situation." Manchester United obviously released their own statement. So, yeah, the Mason Greenwood situation, police have been given a further extension. This is the second extension granted by magistrates in Manchester to the Mason Greenwood situation. So when the police normally ask for an extension, then a secondary extension, that says to me he's very likely to, from personal experience of studying law and being a former law student, and from previous incidents, looking at in the past when it comes to questioning, suspects, when the police get two extensions granted by a magistrate, that says to me they're very likely to charge him by Wednesday evening, and possibly remand in custody. So it's not looking good for Mason Greenwood. Good evening, Jordan. Good to see you. So yeah, the Mason Greenwood situation, that is ongoing. More news keeps breaking in regards to that. So it's a watch this space with the Mason Greenwood situation, and this time tomorrow, for example, or early Thursday morning, we'll have a better idea with what's going on. The whole Mason Greenwood situation has massively overshadowed what has been a very active transfer window in the last few days of the transfer window. Second highest expenditure of the transfer window in a January period of 293 million spent mostly on the last 2 days in the Premier League alone. That is not including the Football League, like the Championship. So very active transfer window. Dele Alli's obviously left Tottenham. Van der Beek's gone to Everton. So there's been a lot of player movement. The bottom 5 clubs have spent big, which has driven the player movement. It was a slow burner to begin with, and then as the transfer window, got nearer and nearer deadline day, transfers, loan moves, permanent transfers exploded through the roof, which has surprised me how much money's actually been spent, considering all Premier League clubs have been operating at a loss in the last 12 months. What's my thoughts on Ramsey to Rangers and Brady retiring? Aaron Ramsey heading to Rangers strengthens the Rangers squad immeasurably. Is surprising, however, what's happened at Juventus with some of their key players leaving in recent seasons. Rangers, however, is a slight surprise. Surprised he didn't go back to England to play, but obviously he's been given a very, very good deal at Rangers. guarantees of first team football, I'm assuming. Um, and he gets to work with a young, inspiring manager in Gio Van Bronckhorst. So obviously, he's obviously had his options open for quite some time. He's obviously not been very, very happy at Juventus for a while. It would have been nice to see Aaron Ramsey back in English football, but he's decided to go to Scottish football. But he's still back in the UK, and Scottish football is not a bad level of football. Let's be honest. Are there issues with Scottish football? Yes. Tom Brady retiring. I'm not surprised, really. I'm surprised he's carried on as long as he has. There's been rumours about Brady retiring like almost every year for like the last 5, 6 years. Um, Brady, announcing his retirement. It's been basically we've been waiting for Tom Brady to retire. Surprised he decided to go for a further year, if I'm brutally honest. But clearly he knows his body. He knows how much he's got left in the tank, and the tank's run dry. But he's over 40. He's like 43, nearly 44. He's been playing in the NFL since 2000. That's 22 years. Um, he's been playing in the NFL. Very few quarterbacks play as long as that. It's a high pressure, position. Um, but the rules around quarterbacks have changed. Had Tom Brady played in an earlier era, I don't think he plays as long. And there is a trend now with professional sports globally to get younger and faster, and he was getting older and older, and the trend is to go younger. So I am surprised he has lasted as long as he has. Is he the greatest of all time? Um, that's a debate that we could have for a long, long time. You have to look at the era he was playing in, and how the rules of the game were adapted to protect the quarterback. I honestly believe if he was retiring this time 20 years ago, he doesn't make it to his early mid 40s. He would have retired by the time he was 30, 35. I don't think he plays as long in an earlier era. And I don't think he would have been as successful or as dominant if he had played in an earlier era. So if he was drafted 20 years earlier, I don't think his career is anywhere near as long. I think his career would have been at least 7, 8 years shorter, and I don't think he makes it to as many Super Bowls as he does, and wins as many Super Bowls as he does. Um, and that is the debate: is when people compare eras. It's a difficult one because the style of play has changed, the rules have changed, the age of the game, as in the average age of squads, has changed. Um, there is a debate about Aaron Rodgers. He stated he doesn't want to hang around for a rebuild at the Packers. Again, you know, he had to wait. He had to bide his time there. Did Aaron Rodgers to become the starting quarterback? When you've got players like Brett Favre, who again dominated his position. Now, Brett Favre, much like Tom Brady, um, contemporary, although admittedly drafted a decade earlier. Um, Again, you look at it, and they are the exception rather than the rule when it comes to the quarterback position. Most quarterbacks do not play as long as other, as or didn't play as long as they do now. Again, as I say, the rules have been changed in regards to the quarterback position and protecting the quarterback from late hits, dirty hits, etc. Does Aaron Rodgers retire at Green Bay? I don't know. He has stated he doesn't want to hang around for a rebuild, and it looks like the Packers will be less competitive going forward for the next couple of years. And we'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. He is very outspoken on a lot of topics, and we will see what happens. If another team comes along, because I think he's in free agency, if another team comes along and offers him a 1 or 2 year deal, I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to play on if the deal is right. He says he don't want to be part of a rebuild. He wants to be part of a winning team or a team with a chance to win the Super Bowl. So if a team wants to come along and offer him a deal, I wouldn't be surprised if he decided to take a 1 or 2 year contract to go around one more time. Um, but it, you have to remember that in the North American leagues, and in fact in most sports leagues, the trend is to get younger. and squads are getting younger. The average age of squads is dropping. Um, More players are ready to play out of the drafts than they were 20 years ago. More players are, NFL ready or NHL ready or NBA ready, almost out the gate these days. Um, and when it comes to assembling a team, yeah, you look at the average ages of teams, they're getting younger. The average age of every major league is dropped in recent years. And players like Brady and Rodgers and all that, Drew Brees retiring last year, um, those senior players, there are less and less of them. And, you know, they retire. It's what happens. You know, but that's the general trend. In 10 years' time, the trend might be okay to get older again. But I don't know what happens with Aaron Rodgers. But as I say, I don't really follow the NFL as religiously as I used to. Um, you know, it's it's one of those leagues like the NHL, which, as I say, is trending in a younger direction. So these older senior players who are coming off contract or are near the end of their contracts to make a decision whether they want to go another year. Um, a lot of them are basically, if they are going to extend their contract or sign a contract, it's for another year at least maximum. Do they decide to go for another year? It's it's And especially when a player's played the majority of all their career at one team. I mean, Brady obviously ending at the Buccaneers. When he left the Patriots, there was a lot of question marks whether he would play on. He decided to play on 2 more years. He's won another Super Bowl. I think playing with a different team and winning a Super Bowl, I think cements Brady's legacy in this current era. But we don't know if another quarterback or quarterbacks are going to come along and are going to dominate in such a way that the old guard did, like the Manning brothers and Brady and other quarterbacks did. So that's an interesting question. You know, it. But as I say, like the trend in professional sports is squads are generally getting younger. There is this race to get younger, quicker, fitter. Um, Now, how long that trend continues is another thing. But there might be a change in, okay, now we need to get more experienced players playing. Um, but I look at some of the young talent that's coming through in various sports, and I am generally stunned by how skilled they are. Some of them how physical they are, and it depends on the position that they play. Um, their fitness, their drive, their commitment. So yeah, but the general trend is to get younger. A lot of sports teams and leagues have been following this trend in the last 5, 6, 7 years, um, and players like Brady and Aaron Rodgers, they're becoming rarer and rarer. At the moment, like Pat Mahomes, for example. Can you tell me why this year at under 9 cricket doesn't have DRS? Because it's under 19s, and it's probably why. The level they're playing at domestically, at a club level, they probably wouldn't have the DRS. Um, so, but it's cricket, and yeah, it's just that's cricket for you. Um, yeah, India have at times at times been highly critical and voiced their opinions about the DRS and things like that, and when they've been playing various series as the home team, it's not been employed. Um, and there are question marks over the amount of influence uh, the Indian Cricket Board of Classification, the Indian Cricket Board of Control, the ICCC, no, the ICBB or whatever it is, or the ICCB, the Indian cricketing board of control. There have been question marks from a wider standpoint over the influence that the Indians have on the ICC. You know, that's not a new criticism labelled at the ICC, as they are heavily influenced by the Indian cricket board, um, and that's not a new complaint that has been raised. Um, Home umpire, yeah, I think that's another one. I think, yeah, cricket has a lot of problems in regards to how it tackles corruption and its transparency. It's uh, yeah, cricket is facing a lot of criticism with how it handles corruption, its transparency process. You know, it's an interesting one. I wasn't aware there was an under-19s World Cup taking place. So you know, cricket could do better in how it advertises tournaments and conducts itself. But the transparency side of things with cricket, a lot of criticism aimed at the ICC. Lack of transparency is how it deals with corruption. There's a lot of negativity surrounding cricket, and its public image. I mean, people. I think with it's a difficult one. I don't watch cricket as much as I used to. Again, there are reasons for that, very similar to the NFL, with the reasons why I don't. Um, and what we saw with the Ashes and how poor England were, some countries need massive overhaul in their structures. The West Indies are not the team they used to be 20, 30 years ago. Well, it's possibly it's an interesting one because obviously we have the discussion of VAR in football, and it's only applied in the Premier League and the higher levels, such as the European Champions League and Europa League, and it's not applied in the lower levels of the game. Um, in that regard, when it comes to a different refereeing standard or different refereeing, you know, tools to their disposal, uh, in 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 my experience, watching as much sport as I do, um, you have to accept that at lower levels of the game and in youth levels, you may not have things that you have at senior level available to the officials. That's not something new to the championship and below, and there are growing calls to get it in, and the FA and the EFL to start funding the use of VAR at the lower levels of the game. We've seen it in the FA Cup, for example, where if the home side is not a Premier League side, there is no VAR. If the Premier League side is the home side, there is VAR. Same in the League Cup. So you have to just, accept it and get on with it. The question mark over officiating standards, that's something that's been raised a lot. It- Fans regularly, criticise officiating. Um, Regularly gets criticised, the quality, the consistency. Um, I think when the technology is available, the officials, I wouldn't say get lazy, they get a bit complacent. They know they don't have to be forced to make a decision. The technology might make a decision for them. I personally, I've seen some pretty shocking officiating with and without technology. I've seen shockingly inconsistent officiating. Um, This England 19 under 19 team has got a mini Joe Root, a mini Joss Butler, and a mini Chris Jordan in it. Well, I don't like it when the press put a lot of pressure on young players, saying this player reminds me of uh, insert player name here. Um, there's a lot of pressure put upon young players very, very quickly, very, very early. Um, and then when they, I mean, should well, I wouldn't say those players you named are actually crap. You just don't like them. I like Josh Butler when he's on form. Joe Root for me isn't captain material. Chris Jordan, is he ever fit? Um, you know, I I have a lot of sympathy for some of these up and coming players in the variety of sports when uh, they're already in around first team squads domestically at at club level, and then they are selected for their age groups at international level. And comparisons are made with existing players or players of past generations who were star players or players who are in the public eye. That puts a lot of pressure, on a younger player. Um, does put a lot of pressure upon a younger player. I would rather not speculate on any alleged corruption, to be honest. Um, bizarre things happen in sport. There's no DRS. Okay, you would have to assume if it was a non-televised county cricket game, there would be no DRS either. So a lot of these players would probably be used to playing in under different umpiring conditions and different, availability or not availability of technology. Um, well, I wasn't even aware an under 19s World Cup was taking place, and if I do watch it, I'll probably watch some highlights, and then I'll. You can probably tell if there's an attempt to make the catch or if it's just I'm going to drop it. You can generally tell by body language if that's a deliberate action. Um, or if the fielder is generally not paying attention. That's quite an allegation to make, saying that was a deliberate drop. Oh God, there has to be a spot fix. Cricket, yes, does have this unfortunate, you know, allegations of corruption in cricket go hand in hand with what we've seen with spots fixing and match fixing allegations, attempts to match fix. That Zimbabwean player who's been banned because he was approached to match fix. Um, it it's a sport that can't shed this reputation of the corruption reputation, and then the question marks have to go again to the ICC and how well are they policing this, and cricket, unfortunately, yeah, can't shake its reputation as a corrupt sport. Can't shake the allegations of match fixing from itself. Um, and we're going back 20 odd years to um, um, the Hansi Cronje days when he was caught out live in front of a parliamentary committee in South Africa, and then 2 years later he basically admitted, yeah, I fixed matches for a significant period of time. Cricket's never recovered from that scandal. It's been over 22 years since um, he was questioned about it. Um, yeah, cricket hasn't recovered, and now with the rise of the IPL and those T20 competitions, and some of the allegations of corruption within the IPL as well, and then what we saw with the Pakistan England series about a decade ago, where three Pakistani players spot fixed, high profile players, in interviews saying that they have been approached. Cricket does have this um, this dark side, and it can't shake that reputation as a corrupt sport. It can't shake the reputation leveled against it that it's infested with corruption. And unfortunately, cricket is a very easy sport to fix. It's a very easy sport to manipulate, and that's the problem. It's very very open to manipulation. Um, Yes, I have heard about this. Now, the Arsenal player in question has not been named. Now, whether that's a current or former Arsenal player, we don't know. Um, but there was an article, I think, a week or so ago, in regards to this allegation that there is, and it's not just a one-off. There is an allegation that Arsenal player or players deliberately got themselves booked um, for betting purposes in order to spot fix, because you can now bet in play on a certain outcome of how many yellow and red cards when a player will get, if an individual player will get booked. Um, Obviously, you can bet, oh, it's going to be a 3-1, but you can actually bet when the first three goals are going to score, individual goal scorers, how many corners, how many fouls, how many free kicks, how many offsides, um, how much injury time, that you can spot bet during play, which is a type of gambling that I'm really not comfortable with and never been comfortable with, and it's clearly open to abuse. Now, the FA have said they are investigating. Obviously, suspicious betting patterns have been noticed. The fact that it is historical allegations of spot fixing is troubling. And I think it occurred between 2016 and 2018. We were going back as far as, you know, 6 years ago. Now, we don't know who this individual is because it's an ongoing investigation. It is troubling, deeply troubling. But if there was a regular betting patterns, I am surprised it has taken this long for the authorities to be notified. Um, Now, I remember a couple of years ago, a Swiss ice hockey match was cancelled before it was even played because already suspicious betting patterns were being highlighted in the run up to the game, and then 8 players were implicated and suspended in relation to that. That's a second division ice hockey match about 2 or 3 years ago in the Swedish league system was cancelled, and then the Swiss league and the Swiss federation came out and said yes, there are suspicions of suspicious betting patterns and an attempt to match fix a match. We have been made aware of these allegations by the betting company, and straight away they were in there. They took charge of the situation. The match wasn't played, so therefore all those suspicious bets now are null and void. So someone's lost a lot of money. And the betting companies came out and said, yes, so we've noticed some suspicious betting patterns in the build up to this game. Um, yes, there's been some really bizarre refereeing at this Africa Cup of Nations, um, which doesn't surprise me. There has been allegations of impropriety is a good word. There have been allegations, absolutely. And Granit Xhaka. He's not really featured for Arsenal lately. It could be Granit Xhaka, could be the player in question. Yes, the referee who screwed up in the group stages and called full time 5-6 minutes early. Yes, I did that. That was almost laughable. But the betting companies do have systems in place to alert the authorities if they have suspicions of irregular betting patterns. And yeah, the matches I've seen, I wouldn't say are fixed. I'm pretty confident in the matches that I've seen, and it's only a handful, have been played to the best of the ability of the players. And I've been played, not I wouldn't say to the highest standard, because the pitches have been a bit suspect, but in my opinion, the matches that I've seen played, the two quarterfinals, the two second round matches, the two second round matches and the two quarterfinals have been played to the best ability of the players, conditions withstanding, especially pitch conditions. You just look how exhausted the players are when they come off the pitch. Uh, yeah, I, I now from what I can gather about the allegations against the Arsenal player, it's a historical allegation going back a couple of seasons, and there's a time frame of they're investigating this player on multiple games in a time frame. Now that player hasn't been identified because it's an ongoing investigation. Um, but yes, there are some suspicious betting patterns when it comes to football. We know of multiple hundreds, and I'm saying hundreds because this is the fact. Since 2006, nearly 700 games are being investigated by authorities in regards to spot or match fixing. So, individual players deliberately getting booked, scoring own goals, for example, that kind of thing, all the way through to whole matches being fixed. Um, uh, and to be fair, Granit Xhaka, his record, his discipline record, isn't great. So you're very likely to say Granit Xhaka is going to get booked in this game. You're very likely to get a positive outcome. Um, on saying that, one individual on Twitter, again, it's gone very quiet on this spot fixing front in regards to the Arsenal being an Arsenal player. What's come out is they can't say if it's a current or ex Arsenal player because there have been a fair squad turnover in that time. But it is, you know, again quite worrying. Yeah, I haven't seen that footage myself, but again, football. I've watched so many documentaries uh, on corruption in football in recent years. So many documentaries. Some of it is quite shocking how rampant the corruption is within the game. It is rampant in at certain levels of the game. In regards to Granit Xhaka, he does have a poor disciplinary record, though. So if you're placing a bet on Granit Xhaka being one of the players booked, you're going to likely get a fair payout. Um, we'll see what happens in regards to Granit Xhaka or any Arsenal current player or ex-player in regards to this spot fixing allegation. It is being investigated, and it's not one. It's not just a standalone game. It's over multiple games that are under investigation, and it's the same player, according to reports. Obviously, there's a legal there's legal things where the media can't report who it is because that may impact any investigation that's been taking place by the authorities. And should there be a internal corruption investigation by the FA, that would likely, I think the police would have to be, the serious fraud squad would have to be involved because that's technically defrauding the betting companies of money um, and defrauding the customer, which is the fans, of money. Yes, the 2002 World Cup, there are allegations been going on about that with that career Italy game for 2 decades. Italy itself were the ones making the complaint. The irony behind that, there were the refereeing standard in that game. I remember watching that game was ridiculous um, at the time, and it's gone down. It's like the '82 World Cup between Austria and Germany, where they played out a game at walking pace, and Algeria got screwed, and they changed the rules over group stage games following that. Um, Again, one of the other games that's infamous for allegedly being fixed. Um, and but then you got like Michel Platini before he was while he was still, I think it was post his UEFA presidency when he said that the '98 World Cup was fixed. Um, Troubling that. that high-profile people within the game have basically said this is fixed, that's fixed. There's allegations about corruption at the 2006 World Cup in Germany. Um, so the issues within football, for example, are long-standing. And yes, the allegations against, especially high-profile games like that. I mean, I've seen some games where I'm questioning the final result. Absolutely, I'm just going to make myself more comfy. Yeah, they're oh god, I've got cereal on my bloody pillow. Oh, right, let's get more comfy. There we go. Yes, there have been allegations levelled about certain tournaments, certain matches at tournaments. But as I say, I think that was down to a draw would guarantee them both through. Hence why. No, it was a 1-0 was the result required because Algeria had already played their game and Germany had lost against Algeria earlier in the tournament. And a 1-0 result for West Germany, as it was at the time, would have guaranteed both Germany and Austria qualification to the second round at that tournament. And that was what the result was. The goal goes in very early on, and then the quality of play is like a training session. And a lot of fans at the time, even there was a German commentator who was like, "I can't. This is fixed. I can't watch this." There was a German commentator who was so ashamed by what he was seeing, was advising his viewers to change the channel and stop watching. And there's been allegations about the '78 World Cup involving Argentina, and then more recent tournaments as well. Well, the England Scotland game, that was just a really poor game. I was surprised by how bad both sides were. Scotland throughout the whole tournament had bright spells, but ultimately came up short. Um, I I wouldn't say that match necessarily was one of those suspect ones. I would say more that the occasion got to both teams. A lot of young players in both squads. Yes, you could argue that there were some really poor refereeing decisions um, in the summer. You could argue that, but this is hindsight. Passions do run high in regards to certain things. Um, on saying that, I read an article somewhere that anywhere between 500 and 700 games are actively being looked at in regards to the possibility that there was an attempt to fix a spot fix or actual match fixing taking place since the 2006 World Cup. That in itself is troubling. That the best part of 1,000 games are being actively looked at in retrospect. They obviously can't change the result, but the betting companies do have fail-safe systems in place where red flags come up if there are suspicious betting patterns, if there are suspicious outcomes. And yeah, the unnamed Arsenal player who's being investigated is troubling. I, in my opinion, yeah, there was a fair bit of frustration. I mean, they got the win in the first game against the Czechs. Um, I was disappointed with what I saw. I mean, I did a match review, and I was disappointed um, in how that game was played. considering normally when it's England Scotland, it doesn't matter how the teams are playing going into that particular fixture. Historically, it doesn't even matter if it's a friendly. That was possibly the worst England performance, and possibly not even a great Scotland performance either. But that was not a great game from both sides, and that surprised me. It doesn't matter what sport. It doesn't matter how the form is going into that particular fixture. It doesn't matter if it's rugby, football, rugby league, cricket. It doesn't matter to me what the sport is when it comes to England versus Scotland. Form goes out the window, and it's normally a blood and thunder game, and that's what a lot of fans were expecting. Was it to be, open end to end, high energy, committed contest, and we got the exact opposite. Um, so you could argue there were some question marks about the match. You know, I felt that England were very, very conservative, played within themselves. Scotland were average in that game as well. So yeah, there are question marks about that game. Uh, Talking of that, I was delighted to see Radwan and Liner brought into the squad by again. Well, look, Courtney Laws hasn't overcome his concussion. Obviously, Owen Farrell's out for the entire tournament. Johnny May's out, at least to begin the tournament. Um, there's a lot of players missing for England going into the Six Nations. You may miss part or all of it. Now, you can go, I'm not a big fan of Owen Farrell, I'm not a big fan of Johnny May or whatever. But that does leave a leadership vacuum. We don't have a captain at the moment because Courtney Laws is the vice captain. He was expected to be named captain for the Six Nations. He's not going to be playing on Saturday. However, we will have to see what squad is announced on Thursday and who is named captain for the match on Thursday. Now, they are suggesting that Courtney Laws will come back into the tournament later on. And as and when he's fit, he is obviously going to be named England captain in the absence of Owen Farrell. So Owen Farrell not necessarily a good or bad thing. You could argue either way. It's a good thing for England. It's a bad thing for England. You lose that captain. However, you do get the time, an extra time to get other players in that 10, 12, axis game time in the run up to the World Cup in 2 years' time. Get them more experience, get them more game time, get those combinations working. So when it comes to the World Cup, you have more depth in the fly half and inside centre positions. But the fact that Courtney Laws hasn't, overcome his concussion, that is troubling. He's not guaranteed to play in the next match either. He's not guaranteed to be fit at all. Obviously, concussion is one of those injuries that can take a long time to recover from, and he might not play in the tournament either. So the captaincy and vice captaincy is going to be another issue as well for this Six Nations. Now, I'm expecting this Six Nations to be very unpredictable Six Nations. Sam Underhill as well. He's another player. He's got a broken leg. He's ruled out. So yes, there's some high-profile players for England missing. A lot of inexperience being brought into the squad. Lack of experience. Same as Scotland. Scotland have got 6 uncapped players in their squad. So there's a lot of youth and inexperience in Scotland's squad. I think all the squads have got a lot of uncapped players. There's a lot of fresh faces. We are midway through a World Cup cycle, so I wouldn't say having these players out is necessarily a bad thing for England. Same with Scotland having players not available, and Ireland and Wales and Italy and France. A lot of new caps, lot of new faces coming into squads. We're halfway through a World Cup cycle. This is the perfect opportunity to test your depth out. Blood new players into the test arena, get them test experience, get them a run in the side, and look at other options for the long-term future for the World Cup after next and the next World Cup cycle as well. Um, we'll see how it all plays out. They are the sink or swim. Um, but yes, concussion. It's a big talking point. Um, it's a very big talking point, and a lot of it comes down to tackle technique, in my opinion. Some of the tackle technique I see is absolutely appalling. Um, there are certain players whose tackle technique isn't a technique at all, and we can argue Owen Farrell's got a bit of a record when it comes to poor tackle technique and all that. He is obviously suffering from an ankle injury, but players like Lee Halfpenny, how is he still playing? I mean, he's knocked himself out so many times by by not tackling correctly, getting his head in the wrong position, and not he hasn't got a good technique. George North not got a good technique. So when it comes to tackle technique, some players really have a poor technique, and that comes down to coaching as well. When you're at youth level, you get taught to tackle correctly. So when I was doing my match reviews of the women's autumn internationals, I was really impressed with the tackle technique, tackle area, the ruck, the maul, the technique involved. It was like going and watching men's rugby 20 years ago. It was refreshing to watch. Um, the technique in contact was far better, far cleaner. Um, Basically, it was how you were taught at youth level when you're playing at school, when you're playing at your local rugby club, and you're playing at the youth levels, and you're learning the game, and you're taught how to tackle properly. You're taught how to scrum properly, scrum straight, even. It was refreshing to watch. It was like a throwback to 20 years ago in the men's game. The tackle technique was so much better. The ruck and the maul technique was so much better. The clear out, the the bind was better. There was a lot of things that the women did better than the men. So then you have to ask the question: okay, is it purely down to coaching? Purely down to coaching, because if the women can get look at the tackle, how to make a rugby tackle, and look and get the technique almost perfect 9 times out of 10. But you look at the men's game, it's they're tackling too high, their heads in the wrong position, they're too upright. Um, they're not hitting man and ball in the logos, as I call it, collarbone to pelvis, and so they're getting it all wrong. Um, the contact is could it be a deliberate attempt to injure at the same time? I haven't seen what's happened to Sam Underhill. I know he's out injured. There are players who are out injured. That's uh, yeah, that's a fair accusation to make. I would say if there's a deliberate attempt to injure it with a bad tackle, that should be a lengthy suspension. And I refer to my Latrell Mitchell comments in regards to the NRL with his shoulder charge to Joseph Marnie. There was no attempt to make a tackle there. He had lined up his opposition player from quite some way out. He was going to make a hit, legal or not. He's lined him up. He's led with the shoulder, and he's broken the opposition player's face. When I say broken his face, he's caved in his cheekbone, a complex compression fracture where his cheek exploded, and an air pocket got in his sinus, and it just blew up. Um, Now, that was a deliberate, in my opinion, a deliberate attempt. There were those trying to say there was mitigating circumstances. I watched it live in full. I watched it live, and it was he lined him up from 20, 30 yards away and hit him shoulder into head. No attempt at wrapping the arms. You could argue that Joseph Manu was off balance. There was an attempt to tackle to bring him down. He was in an unnatural position. Even so, had he been stood upright, that's a broken jaw. So the point of contact was still going to be with the head neck area. Um, oh my! Our bloody fire alarm in the building's got a fault again. Here with beeping. I'm gonna have to phone up the bloody maintenance people. Um, that's rugby league, mind. I've seen the same in Union as well. If you are a rugby league fan, just check out the last time the Roosters and the Rabbitohs played in the regular season, right at the end of I think it was the second last game of the season. Um, it was a nasty it was a nasty hit, real nasty hit. Um, something you're more likely to see in ice hockey, and even then it's a dirty hit. And he got a 6 week suspension for that. So he missed all the finals, and he's now missing the All Star game. But you have to watch it in real time. Watching it in slow mo is not good viewing. You have to watch it in real time. You look at his starting position, and you look at the target area, and had his opposition player not been trying to break a tackle and slipping slightly, had he been upright straight, he's still getting hit high. That would be a broken jaw and a serious throat or neck injury. So, and the force behind it, the intent behind it, the distance he's run, he's made no attempt to wrap his arms. He's led straight away, shoulder to elbow, shoulder to this area. Um, in other contact sports like rugby union, that is a lengthy suspension. We are head injuries will happen, concussions will happen. There will be missed time challenges. Um, and so yeah, accidental contact with the head will happen. We want to get dirty hits out of contact sports like rugby league, like ice hockey, like the NFL. Accidental collisions with the head will happen. You know, there will be. You're not going to get concussion out of these sports. You're not going to get head injuries out of these sports. When it's deliberate, you need to draw a line in the sand and bring in lengthy suspensions. Um, and the consistency in discipline as well needs to be there, and that's something else we haven't seen before with how the citing commissioners work and the disciplinary committees work. There's been a lot of inconsistency where one player will get 3 games or 4 games, another player will get 8. Um, yes, I mean the NFL they brought a lot of rules to protect the quarterback, but wide receivers and running backs don't have the same protections. No, I do agree with that, and even in defensive players who are going for the intercept as well, so kick returns. While there are rules in place to make sure you get a clean catch for a kick return, um, there's nothing to say that the player going in to tackle him can't take his head off. Um, and the tackle technique. NFL players, when they watch rugby league and they watch rugby union, they are stunned with the fact that we don't have body armor when we're beating the crap out of each other. They generally just can't get their head around the fact that the contact, the force, the energy, the power put into the collisions, and the physicality without the body armor amazes them. But better tackle technique. I will say this: the women's tackle technique in the autumn was brilliant. There was 1 or 2 tackles where I thought, okay, that is poor technique, or that is verging on foul play. But for the most part, really impressed with the tackle technique. Really impressed with the tackle area, the ruck, the maul, the scrummaging area as well. They were scrummaging properly. Really impressed with that. Um, it was refreshing to watch. Uh, in regards to the NFL, rule changes brought in to protect the kick receiver and the quarterback um, when they're in their pocket spaces. When the kick receiver is attempting to make the catch, make a fair catch, he puts his hand up like a mark, saying you can't hit him. Years past, defending player can drill him. Quarterback initially when they're in the pocket, they're more protected from dirty and late hits, and also when they release the ball. Um, So that there are certain rule changes that have been brought in to mitigate certain things because incidents have happened in the past that are unsavoury. But yeah, wide receivers when they're trying to, when they're in the process of catching the ball like that, and they're looking up, and the defenders, can catch him. So he's quick. He's looking like that. His view is on the ball. The defender can just line him up and drill him. Yes, you can say there's pass interference sometimes, but some of the contact is. There's a reason why NFL players and the CTE lawsuit is a thing. Um, in regards to discipline type things, and now I'm just going to have a look, see if there's any further update on the Mason Greenwood situation. Mason Greenwood's been withdrawn from all EA Sports FIFAs that he's appeared in. He's been pulled from them, and obviously Nike have issued their statement. That is very interesting, Alan, because he hasn't actually been charged yet. It's very, very interesting that the Seattle Seahawks under Carroll introduced the rugby tackle technique, and there was an actual debate on why it's safer. NFL was brutal. Yes. Um, yeah, Brady has definitely confirmed his retirement. Aubameyang's obviously on the way out of Arsenal. Or there was the debate about his contract. Um, right, the Scottish Premiership. Livingston St Johnstone's are 1-1. Aberdeen are beating Ross County. All the other games are 0-0 as things currently stand. So not a very high scoring. Yes, so I know about the Mason Greenwood. I've already covered that. There's been the Greater Manchester Police over the weekend asked for an initial extension. They were granted that initial extension to question. They've been granted a further extension until tomorrow to question him further. Now, when that extension expires, I think would either be lunchtime or midnight, which says to me they're very likely to charge him, especially if he's been rearrested on further charges. I think he's going to be charged. I think he may possibly be remanded in custody, very similar to Benjamin Mendy. And then I can see him being charged and remanded. I think Mason Greenwood, much like Benjamin Mendy, is going to be facing some jail time. I think you don't ask for 2 extensions to question if there's not significant evidence in order for them to get a charge and therefore a possible conviction. The problem is with the Benjamin Mendy and Mason Greenwood situations is the amount of social media speculation and the trial by social media. Now, bearing in mind, Nike and EA Sports, they've obviously been aware of the situation. They've been updated by their legal teams. This is what's going on. We have sponsorships with this guy. These are the allegations he's facing. However, evidence is in the public domain that look not great. Basically, which don't look good. They've obviously consulted their legal teams on pulling him from their products, their sponsorships. It doesn't look good when his personal sponsor Nike have terminated their deal with him. That says to me that they have been, liaising with solicitors and going, look, what is the likelihood of a conviction? They've probably been told there's quite a high likelihood that he is going to get convicted. Considering the charges and the new charges of threats to kill, that can be classed as attempted murder. That can actually be up to charge. And attempted murder is 5 to 15 years. So making a threat to kill, they can charge with a higher offence. From my experience looking at previous cases, when there's an extension asked for a questioning period, generally that they're going to press charges. He's going to be charged with offences. He's going to be remanded. You don't. If he was going to be charged, done. Ched Evans, yes, the Ched Evans case, his co-accused was found not guilty at the first trial anyway, which then raised a lot of doubt about his conviction, and that's the basis of his appeal that was successful at his second trial. And his career, he did play again, didn't really have the same impact he did before. However, his co-accused was found not guilty at the first trial. That then said to me that that was an unsafe conviction because they were both put on trial for the same offence, gang rape basically, and his co-accused found not guilty. So when he was found guilty, that raised questions about, okay, then why is his co-accused getting off? He then based his whole appeal on the fact his co-accused, who wasn't, there at the time, and witnesses placed there at the time, having a not guilty verdict, he won his appeal at retrial. And the thing is, Ched Evans was not remanded in custody. He was bailed. He was allowed out on bail. I think Mason Greenwood, with the threats to kill and other offences being added over a significant period of time, from what we can gather, this is not like just a one-off incident. This is other evidence has come to light, because I do believe there is more to this than what we have seen on social media. If the threats to kill charge is there, that says to me that there is other evidence has come to light that, because he's been rearrested. So he was already being questioned before, and then they've arrested him on other charges. So that says to me that what we saw on social media is a small snapshot of what is actually going on in regards to Mason Greenwood and allegations against him or evidence against him. That says to me that, other things have been going on that we, as general public, aren't aware of, because there was rumours circulating about Mason Greenwood this time last year, and at the end of 2020, last season, for example, doing the rounds on social media, the rumour mill, about question marks about Mason Greenwood and some of his behaviours off the field, because there was an unnamed player who roughly fits the same age, an alleged kidnapping of someone. Now, it was doing the rounds on social media, an unnamed player, and guess what? He's the right age for that unnamed player who was allegedly being investigated for other things, and now we're seeing a second arrest and on further allegations, including the threats to kill. I think is the one that actually is going to carry, if found guilty, could be upgraded to attempted murder, because planning or threatening to kill someone can be construed as that in a court of law. It's true, there is precedent in the English legal system, and therefore, and now we're discussing stuff that should be on the other channel, legal stuff. Again, from experience and looking at previous cases, when there's an extension granted by the magistrate and then a further extension, because normally it's 12 to 24 hours you can generally be held for, right, before you have to be charged, unless you get an extension. The police have now had 2 successful extensions, which says to me not only is he in serious up creek without a paddle, I believe he's going to get charged with all these offences, if not more. I bet there's more to this, because they can remand him in custody and then build a further case with more charges brought forward while he's remanded. I think he's done. Benjamin Mendy, Prison FC, the jokes of doing the rounds, Gylfi Sigurdsson, Ryan Giggs. Yeah, there's an unnamed Brighton player as well who's under investigation for something, although never named, so he may not have been charged with anything. The fact that Benjamin Mendy and Mason Greenwood have been, their names are now in the public domain. Mendy has been charged, and while he was on remand, was charged with a further offence. So I think there's even more to this than what we, as the public, know about. I think there's maybe other people have come forward and said, look, I've witnessed this, 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 and this, or I've got evidence of this, 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 and this, because I think there's going to be further stuff to to come out. Yeah, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there could be more to this than what we are aware of in the media, what we're aware of as fans, as the public. I think there could be more to come out because you don't ask for two extensions to question someone if there's not a series of this. This is quite serious. Um, you know, unless it's a clear cut, you've done it, we're charging you, you're remanded or bailed. Bosh. The fact they've asked for a second extension and it has been granted by the magistrate, in my opinion, he's in trouble. The Brighton player was never named. The Brighton player was never named, and so there's people speculating who it is. He was never actually named, which says to me that no charges were forthcoming in regards to that incident. Um, and yeah, you have to be careful because that's speculation, and it's like the Sale Sharks player. There was an arrest made. Eddie Jones was made aware because they were eligible to play for England. There's three players of the right. What the Sale Sharks player? There were three players who are aged 28 who have played at least one game for England who are on the Sharks books. People were saying it was Marlon Yard, yet there were two other England players um, on 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 the books at Sale, and that player's never been named in regards to a similar offence to Mason Greenwood. So this is not an isolated incident in professional sport, as I say. Um, Football, for some reason, yeah, there's been four players this season who had legal issues off the field. Gylfi Sigurdsson being another one, and of course Ryan Giggs this last year. Um, with his legal troubles. Um, so there's definitely a culture issue within the sport itself. In the wider sport community, there is definitely evening, Dan. How I'm doing okay. Just doing a quick live stream this evening. I might go for another half hour, 40 minutes maybe. Um, oh, God, my hair's a mess. Work's going all right, which is nice. We're discussing what's happening with Mason Greenwoods and other sporting topics. Of course, well, we forgot to mention the Winter Olympics is due to start in the next few days. Completely forgot about that. Um, I've been asked my views on the Winter Olympics. I've been asked, my thoughts on it. If it's anything like the Summer Olympics with no fans and there's a lot of politics behind it, it's probably not going to be a great spectacle, if I'm honest. Um, which is a shame because I used to love watching the Winter Olympics, but as time has gone on, I'm enjoying these big events like the Olympics less and less. And what we saw in Tokyo in the summer was no fans, people feeling the vibrancy and I'm just going to grab a drink quickly. Wasn't there? Oh my god! No, that's the wrong coffee. Oh, I'm not watching the hockey at the Olympics. The NHL players aren't playing, so I've got no interest. 4 years ago, while the Germans played very well, I've got not really much interest without the NHL players there because you've not got the best players on show. And I've got nothing against the players who are selected to play at the Olympics, not at all. But the best players aren't there, so it's not going to be as high quality as what it would have been had they gone, which was in the CBA agreement. So needed that. Yeah. So without the NHL players at the Olympics, um, I tried. I watched a fair few games at the last Olympics 4 years ago in regards to the ice hockey, um, and yeah, the Germany Canada game. Okay, look, the Germans played really well, but this is the Winter Olympics, by the way. This is not the Summer Olympics. The Winter Olympics. I will be watching. I think some of the downhill skiing, the snowboard cross, the ski cross, the snowboarding, skiing events, and the bobsleigh, the more extreme events. I will be watching, um, just because I like those winter sports. But without fans there, it won't feel the same. Um, the atmosphere. A lot of people who watched the Olympics in the summer were very critical of the lack of atmosphere and how it didn't feel right watching it and I think the athletes. I think it did affect the athletes not having fans in the stadiums. Um, it affected the energy levels absolutely. And so we'll see how this one pans out for viewership. We'll see how it all pans out. Will I be watching the Commonwealth Games? I might catch some of the Commonwealths. I might do. I'm not, but as I say, I didn't watch any of the Olympics this summer, so certain sports I've sort of tuned out on. In recent years, I'm more focused now on my rugby league, my rugby union, and my ice hockey. I still obviously follow the football, um, as you know, but like certain sporting tournaments and events, I don't follow anymore. But yes, I think they could have put more effort into promoting this Commonwealth Games. I know there's been a lot of investment in Birmingham in recent years in infrastructure, in the stadium rebuild for the athletic stadium. So I know there's been a lot of money pumped into Birmingham, um, directly and indirectly, to improve infrastructure and get the venues ready. And I mean, I actually worked on a contract job in Birmingham, which was actually partly funded because the Commonwealth Games was coming to Birmingham in 2022. It was part of when the bidding process was going on. A lot of the schools were getting extra funding, and educational infrastructure was being improved. Um, and this was back in 2014, so this is 8 years ago. This was when I think Birmingham was still bidding to get the Commonwealth Games, and there was a big drive by local and regional government funds to drive infrastructure projects and education is part of infrastructure, in my opinion, and redevelopment as part of the bid process. We're saying that we are pumping money in to develop the city, fix the city. Um, Birmingham as a city is a sporting heartland of this country. People forget that the universities have big sporting programs. The Amateur Athletics Association has a rich history in the West Midlands. Um, Done my lid up too tight. Um, you know, the history of and the importance of the city of Birmingham to British sport cannot be understated. Um, and so yeah, I am looking forward to the Commonwealths in a certain aspect. You know, And when the Commonwealths take place, it's been 10 years since the Olympics in London. So, and it's been a further 20 years since the Commonwealths in Manchester. So, three of our biggest cities have hosted these major events in the last 20 years. And both Manchester and London, there has been a legacy left by the infrastructure. The Etihad being the Commonwealth Stadium in Manchester, and the Olympic Stadium, is now the London City Stadium, which plays host to West Ham. So there has been a legacy left from those games, be it Commonwealths or Olympics, that are still being felt right now. Um, so I hope Birmingham has a similar legacy to leave behind down the line in regards to what both Manchester and London have had in the last 20 years. And I fondly remember the Manchester Commonwealth Games 20 years ago. I fondly remember the uh, the Olympics. Why is I'm surprised Liverpool have not hosted the Commonwealth Games. I'm not so surprised. Liverpool's hosted a lot of things in its time. Um, it's been a city of culture. It's had UNESCO World Heritage site status for some of the locations around Liverpool. Um, it's had a lot of development itself, but you got to remember when cities bid for these international sporting events and international music events and other international events, it's a lot of money they're putting on the table. Even if it's an unsuccessful bid, it costs a lot of money. And you know, I can remember Kuala Lumpur in was it 98 had the Commonwealths. I remember, and as I say, like um, yeah, the Olympics takes place when the Euros is on, and the World Cup takes place when the Commonwealth is on. That's how I remember how the sequence works. Um, I'm not surprised Liverpool hasn't had a Commonwealth or Olympic Games. I'm not. You, you've got to remember the cost of just the bidding process alone is huge, absolutely huge. Um, you have to remember that the huge cost associated with just bidding for an international event, be it an Olympics, a Commonwealths, a World Cup, and any World Cup that is, because you've got rugby union, rugby league, football, cricket. The bidding process is expensive. It's like they used to bid for the Super Bowl and the world. It is expensive. And when you are sat on a city council, you're sat on a regional government body or a state government or a national government, you've got to weigh up the pros and cons of bidding for such a thing. It's like England is the FA are looking at a bid for the 2028 Euros and the 2030 World Cup. And again, just the bidding process alone. That's even before getting all the stadiums ready, all the infrastructure in place. Um, you know, the host cities, all that kind of thing. That's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. Um, so we'll see if that's. And you've also got to wonder, is there a drive to have a massive athletics venue in Liverpool, and the infrastructure you would require for that, the amount of investment and money pumped into an infrastructure project like that, a rebuild project like that, you have to, because you've already got these world class stadiums in Anfield and Goodison Park already in Liverpool. So You have to factor that in. The choices of sports in the Commonwealth Games are interesting. Like squash, no, squash is a brilliant sport. Love it. Lawn bowls is quite interesting. The reason why it's not an Olympic sport is not enough people outside the Commonwealth nations actually play bowls, ironically. Um, that's not overly interesting. 10-pin bowling used to be a Commonwealth sport as well. Actual bowling, 10-pin was a 10. Well, I think it was a trial sport at the Commonwealths in '98. I think it also might have been a trial event at the Olympics in 2000. I know it was at the Commonwealth Games in '98, Kuala Lumpur. Um, but yes, there's been a lot of debate about whether England should, be part of a joint bid for the 2030 um, football World Cup and the 2028 Euros as well. For me, it's a no-brainer because you've already got the stadium infrastructure in place. Um, at the same time, there's a lot of politics behind the scenes with UEFA and FIFA and on the side of things. Surprise football isn't a good opportunity for nations like Cyprus and Jamaica. Um, that that could you word that question better? Surprised football isn't their good opportunity for nations like Cyprus and Jamaica, those type of nations. Mm. Um, uh, what are your general thoughts on double elimination style tournaments in sports? Double eliminations. I know that that's an interesting one. I think each sport suits a certain style of knockout, play when you get to that knockout stage of tournaments. Certain sports suit certain styles of tournament play, tournament structure. Um, the under 19s? No, I wouldn't get coverage because it's under 19s. It's a minor tournament. It's not the main senior squad. If it's a senior squad, then maybe, but we're not the hosts, and we're not playing against Australia and New Zealand. So yeah, the reason why we got the 2019 final free to air TV is because we were the hosts and we had a good chance of winning. Um, uh, although there is a debate about the growth of cricket, the TV rights, um, and all that, and the direction the sport is taking, and growth strategies and all that. It's an overseas tournament, and the TV rights, it's overseas. If it was domestic, yeah. If it was in this country, you could argue, but it's overseas, so therefore Sky already has the rights with the ECB for any overseas cricket tests, or T20 or one days or anything like that. So it wouldn't be shown. It would be in breach of Sky's contract with the ECB. Sorry to disappoint. The overseas tests have always been on subscription TV since 1992, so any overseas international cricket has always been on pay per view. Always has been. It was the original agreement was the domestic Test series, the domestic T20s and one days would be on free to air, and the overseas would be on Sky originally, and then 2005 came along and that was that to the fans. But I do think we are seeing growing pressure to bring back domestic. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The ECB is the sanctioning body for the England team. They're the representatives of the England and Welsh Cricket Board, and it's an overseas event that isn't being hosted on UK soil, so it will never be on free-to-air TV. And it's not a class as a Category A sporting tournament either; that is protected, so it will not be on free-to-air. Sorry to disappoint. Um, what is happening? Yeah, the under-19s have just made the final. Something's just happened on my email. That's very of interest. But no, the cricket. It's an overseas tournament. It's not taking place on UK soil, and the TV rights. There's a young lad in the team called George Bell. He does actually look like Ian Bell, not related apparently. I bet he is. I would laugh if actually he is at some point related to, you know, Ian Bell. That would make me laugh a little bit. Um, right, nothing interesting there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's good to see the younger players getting their opportunity, like as a touring team as well. Like they're playing overseas, so that's a bit of experience they can take. And of course, it's the future of the game. Uh, and and that in itself is a good thing for these young lads having this time overseas as a team, and hopefully as the years progress, a lot of them stick at playing cricket, stick in the county game at any format, T20, first class, one day, build their experience and their confidence, and hopefully they all come through as a nice wave together for the senior side. And yeah, hopefully they develop quite well. Um, and the future hopefully is bright. However, it's the exposure they should be getting is not there. And I've been saying that with cricket, they've got the TV rights all wrong. They've got the exposure of the sport all wrong, and therefore it's waning in popularity in regards to other sports that are more accessible and more visible. Um, I didn't even know there was an under-19s T20 World Cup on. That's there, you know, it that sums up the the situation. Is I wasn't even aware there was a World Cup on, um, which is part of the problem. Um, how many people would have been fully aware that was an under-19s, you know, World Cup on? And with everything that's happened in cricket, with the negative headlines we had at the end of last year as well, that you know, it would have been an opportunity to, you know, have some positive headlines in regards to the sport. Now, this is the next generation of England players basically playing. who in the next 5, 10 years may be in the Test side or in the one-day side, for example. Um, and this is that next generation playing. And well, where's the drive to put the exposure out there for these lads to the wider sporting audience to say, look, this is the future of our sport or the future of our cricket team at least, and our pathways there. That's something the ECB and the ICC could do a hell of a lot better. Other countries have a better way of promoting the sport. I think in Australia it's promoted very, very well. For all the flaws that Australian cricket has, and there is a lot of problems with Australian cricket, far from perfect, they do promote their brand better. They do, promote their. I mean, like the Sheffield Shield is limited in its scope with the amount of teams. Um, they've got the Big Bash. That's well promoted over there. That is the promotion of the Big Bash League. And all the Australian players are actually household names in Australia. Do I think rugby league will be at the Olympics? No, because rugby union's already at the Olympics, and the sports are too similar. The codes are too similar. Rugby union's already there, so no. While rugby union's at the Olympics, rugby league will not be there. Cricket is at its lowest point in this country at the moment. Yes, I think it is. I think the damage with the Yorkshire scandal and the poor Ashes series has definitely had a massive impact on the opinion of cricket at the moment. And yeah, I think cricket's at its lowest ebb for quite some time. But it's been a sport that's been in decline for quite a while, and it's not just an English ECB problem; it's a much wider issue that the sport is facing at this time. Um, it's yeah, there's a definite argument to say that the sport is in decline. And there's always been the question mark over the future of Test cricket, um, the future of the domestic game. A lot of questions. Yeah, I do think the 2019 World Cup it's been overshadowed by following events, and also the hundred, the format that no one wants because it's a reactionary policy by the ECB to try and bridge the gap with the falling viewership numbers. Because that World Cup final, peak viewership was still 10 million lower than peak viewership of the Ashes in 2015. So over that 14-year period, 10 million people switched off. And that's casual viewers that the sport has lost. That's putting it behind a paywall for the best part of a decade and a half has harmed the sport. And then a lot of the negative headlines that have come out about individual players, the match fixing scandals, the corruption within the sport since 2005, and then what's happened in the last few months, and the diabolical Ashes series we've just had. There you go. Need I say more? Need I say more? Test cricket is in decline, not limited overs. Well, limited overs, is it? Is it really on the up? Because the IPL has been surrounded by corruption allegations since its inception. the the game over here has been mismanaged by the ECB for a very, very long time. I don't know what else there is to say. The TV rights is just good enough, really. I mean, I think T20 and the one day game is perfect for TV. And I'm a fan of all formats. I really am. Of the three formats, I'm a fan of all three of them. There are changes I would make. I would think the day night test format is the way to go to reinvigorate Test cricket. I think the T20 and one day formats just get rid of power play overs, just make it a shorter format of Test cricket, basically. But other than that, I think especially T20 is perfect for live TV. One day matches again, they're pretty good for TV coverage. Um, Admittedly, I think you would have to have a free to air sports network to cover that. Um, and I do think the day night test match is the right format to go forward for Test cricket, because then you get rid of the bad light argument stopping play. Um, I wouldn't say cricket's slowed down. I think it's in crisis, and I think the TV rights is definitely something to do with the sport being in the situation it's in. Um, but the situation in the domestic county game is quite troubling, and the allegations that have come out at Yorkshire and to a certain extent Essex and individual players at other county teams is worrying. Um, the COVID pandemic hasn't helped finances, and then you've got the various players who've come forward saying they've been approached to match fix, and it's not isolated. So there's a lot of things going on. There's been individual players with ill discipline and legal troubles off the field, um, which, while some of these players aren't high profile and some of them are, again is a worrying a worrying thing. I wouldn't say the sport is dying. I think it's in crisis. That's my opinion on the state of cricket. It's not dying. It's in crisis. That's my way of looking at the state of cricket right now. Um, Not dying. It's in crisis. I think it needs fresh direction at the ECB. I think there has to be question marks asked of the ECB and the media rights deals they put in place, the accessibility of the sport, the fact the 100, they've already admitted it was going to make a loss anyway to begin with. It might break even on the second year. COVID comes along and it's just, well, that's going to continue to hemorrhage money. Um, and it's like some TV executive back in the 80s was doing large amounts of cocaine when they came up with that idea, because it's it's what is it? What is the 100? It's a reactionary policy to other policies the ECB's put in place that have hampered the game's growth, development, and future. And so it's a knee jerk reactionary, um, short term fix, if so to speak. And it's not really a fix, really. It's just we need to do something because we need to do something, and rather than just looking at, okay, maybe we should put the T20 games on free to air, the international T20s on free to air, the one day games on free to air, something. Because I do believe the future is the shorter formats of the game. That's my opinion. That's why I think the long term future of the sport is the long term future is the shorter formats, because they are more entertaining. You know, you can get the game done in a day rather than over 5 days. Well, I think Test cricket, there's still a place for it. I think the international calendar is a mess, but definitely the shorter formats are absolutely entertaining. I love them. Now the traditions don't, but I think we need to. Yeah, the sport needs to modernise, and I think the shorter formats are brilliant formats. There's no doubt now. There's changes that need to be made to them to make them shorter formats of Test cricket. The power play overs frustrate me. I'm not a fan of them. But when played in the right manner, the short formats can be exceptionally exciting, especially if they're played at a high pace with high intensity for the entire 20 or 50 overs. They are exceptionally entertaining. I will happily watch a T20 or a one day match. Happily sit there and watch a full day's playing. I'm happy with that. I can happily watch a 5 day test match. You know, but yeah, the 100 is a reactionary policy by the ECB to fix the problems that they've caused, and it's more like doing something for the fact you need to do something. Whoever thought this through, it was short. It was not really planned very well. It's been not really thought through very well, very, very quickly, very rushed, it seems. Oh, and they've got a fast food company as the main sponsor. So that's really brilliant. Couldn't make that up. It's a rushed idea, not thought through very well. The only people in favour are the ECB and the centrally contracted players, which is hilarious because most people on social media go, "This is not what we want." Um, what? How about just give us free to air cricket of any format? Any format. We don't care if it's like amateur level. Just give us free to air. Here you go. Have this. No, that's not what we want. But have this. It's. They're not listening to their fan base. The customers are saying, "We want this product. Have this product instead. We can't give you that. But have this. But we want this. No, no, have that. Look, lots of bells and whistles. It's a sport that's using a gimmick to try and attract new fans is a sport in crisis. It's a sport that is using gimmicks to either freshen itself up or attract new fans, which is what the ECB said. New fans, the kids and the stay-at-home mums was their press release, which I'm thinking, what? Really? Okay. Um, Sexist. Which the ECB clearly is. It's the old boys club. Um, yeah, no, I like ODIs and T20s. They're perfect for TV. They're perfect for free to air TV. That they are designed for a Saturday or a Sunday TV audience, or a bank holiday Monday or a Good Friday TV audience. They are designed for the TV audience. They're designed for the fans going to the game. That is the ultimate fan experience. And yet we have nothing on free to air TV. Nothing. That is a shambolic state of affairs. Um, so, and the fact that the ECB are coming up with this 100 format and not all the 100 format games are on free, it, it it's a rushed idea that hasn't been thought through, that has lots of unintended consequences, which is pissing off your existing fans. It's all well and good attracting new fans. If all the existing fans go, we're not watching this at all, we're going to boycott the sport, then you've already just killed off your fan base, pissed off your fan base. And 95% of what I've seen on social media is not good. And when you dumb down a sport, in this case, overcomplicate, because they haven't dumbed it down, they've just made it complicated. Brain dead decision. Rather than just go with the simple thing, go, yeah, we'll put the T20 summer, is it Summer Bash or wherever it is? We'll whack that on free to air TV. There you go. instead of just putting the what the fans want, which is domestic, either domestic test series, so when we're the home team, or T20s or one days, or even bring back the IPL to free-to-air TV coverage might be a start, because that actually was kind of good on ITV back in the day. That's all we want. That is all cricket fans want, is free-to-air accessible viewing. Have the 100. No, we don't want that. Have the 100. We don't want that. We've been saying for years, this is what we want. This is what we miss out on. You've sold the sport out. We want this back. Existing fans are switching off. We need to get new fans in. Well, your existing fan base is shrinking and switching off in large numbers. Now, yes, some of them would have died because of old age, but those fans that were attracted in the early 2000s, those kids, those teenagers, are now, like me, in their late 20s, early to mid 30s. We're switching off. We were engaged 20 years ago. We were getting engaged in the England cricket team in the build up to that 2005 Ashes. You know, when I was a kid, I was getting engaged in cricket because it was on free to air TV. It was there, it was accessible. In my summer holidays, if you know, I had nothing to do, I had something to watch. And it would keep me entertained while my mum could go to work. She was like, "Yeah, I can leave him here. He'll watch this all day while I'm out at work." Gosh, there you go. I was engaged. I was playing it at school anyway, but I was actively engaged in watching the cricket in my summer holidays. When I didn't, on a Thursday or a Friday, when I didn't, have me go see my mate, I was actively engaged. I could watch a 5-day test match. And my mum would be like, "Okay, he's staying out of trouble and he's watching the sport. Kudos." Right? So people in my age range, their late 20s, early 30s, were actively engaged in the sport 20 odd years ago. 2005 rolls along. The day we win the Ashes, the next day, the ECB goes, "We've got all this popularity," and they sell the popularity to Sky. Going, "Look at all the fans we built up over the last 4 or 5 years. Look at all the fans." And Sky were like, "Yeah, we'll take the opportunity." And straight away, viewership fell off a cliff. Straight off a cliff. And it's been continually falling for years. So all that engagement that had been built up, especially with kids, let's say possibly poorer backgrounds, where the financial means of the family wasn't as great as others, has been lost. That engagement that was there has gone, and then you lose that 10 million casual fans have switched off in since 2005. There's a reason for that. The lack of accessibility gone. And we've seen record figures for the women's football since it's been on free to air TV, especially internationals, going up and up and up. The Euros, record viewership figures for the men. The World Cup, record viewership figures. Because guess what? Free to air TV. The first time I put a Premier League game on free to air TV broke all viewership records for a Premier League match by some margin. We're talking millions of people watched. Even neutrals were, "Oh, that's free to air. That's football on TV. Oh, that's Premier League football. There's Premier League football on free to air TV." I mean, it was Bournemouth, I think, playing Brighton, I think it was. Wasn't the two best teams in the league. Smashed viewership records. Smashed them. Yeah, last season, 82 households paid for the Burnley, the Burnley West Brom. I believe it was Burnley West. Yes, it was Burnley West Brom pay per view. 86 people were willing to pay to view that. Tells you all you need to know about how the greed has just pissed fans off and they're just not willing to pay anymore. So yes, cricket's shot itself in the foot, and that's the ECB. That is the ECB over a significant period of time have got things wrong, in my opinion. Um, you know, definitely, um, definitely got things wrong. And the rugby league, the Super League being on Channel 4, it's only 12 games overall, 10 regular season, 2 postseason games, not the grand final, um, which I think should be one of the free to air games. Just get the grand final on there, wider audience. Definitely will be a shot in the arm for the sport. It's a positive start. It's a small step. It's baby steps. I think as time goes on, Channel 4 will get more and more of a stake and show more and more live games. Um, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Um, obviously, Premiership final. I'm assuming that's rugby union is going to be shown on ITV. Again, there's starting to be a trend now. There's a demand. I think not the TV companies, but the sports have realised we not football, but the other sports have realised we're losing money. We're losing fans here. We're losing. We're not doing as well as we should be. Um, and especially BT Sports hemorrhaging cash. Um, BT Sports in is a financial mess, which is one of the reasons why if you're with EE or BT or PlusNet, your bills keep going up. Is to cover the fact that BT Sport is hemorrhaging money and losing rights, and has been hemorrhaging money from day one. And the pushback with fans going want the Champions League and Europa League back on free to air, joint coverage with Sky, been a big. That's not gone down well with the BT having the sole. That's put off a lot of people. And when you've got Florentino Perez going, young people aren't interested in the sport anymore. Why? Because you keep putting it behind the paywall because you're greedy. Sorry. Football is starting to figure out that now the football clubs are losing money. Yes, now that you have to look at COVID notwithstanding, there was going to come a point where the bubble would go, psst, and the bubble has burst. COVID has sped up the process. I honestly believe we would still be in the same financial position just 5 or 6 years down the line. It's been sped up because of the COVID pandemic. And I think the warning signs were there when Berry basically went bust in 2019. 2.5 years ago, the warning signs were like, I think the money bubble's about to burst. And then COVID comes along and bursts it quicker than the process was allowing. It just sped up the process. So a lot of professional sports haven't got very stable finances. And what has been happening, I mean, rugby union, for example, the Welsh game is in crisis. The Welsh game is in utter crisis, and it's been in financial crisis for 20 years. Um, and they still can't figure out how to fix it. The Welsh Union is basically bankrupt. They still can't figure out how to fix it. If England win the final on Saturday, we will hold the women's, men's, and under-19s only on. Yes, we will hold the triple crown, as I would call it. I don't think any nation has ever held all three at the same time. I don't think any. I don't think any nation's held all three at the same time. We'll have to look into that. That's an interesting little stat if that's the case. If England do that, then yes, that is a positive. However, I think all the hard work that the men's team put in 2019 has been undone with this Ashes series and all the scandal that we've had at the end of last year. We're not talking about that World Cup success. Until tonight, I wasn't aware there was number 19 World Cup taking place. So cricket can do a lot better at advertising the sport. I wouldn't say we're shy at everything else. I just do think there are massive issues within the structures of English cricket that have been allowed to fester for the best part of excuse me, the best part of 17 years. Oh shit! Didn't want to do that. Oh shit! Yeah, I mean, there's the issues with English cricket. It hasn't happened overnight, and yes, um, we've got a very good one-day setup and one-day structures in place. Um, no, I've not watched any of the futsal. I haven't. The thing is, when it comes to futsal and some of these indoor sports, I'm not overly a fan of them. If I'm honest, um, I prefer my more contact sports in regards to like rugby union, rugby league, ice hockey. I prefer more of those gladiatorial contact contact sports. Um, uh, that's that's the kind of team sports I like watching. On oh god, it's 10 o'clock. I've gone on a little bit longer than I thought. Um, no, I'm more of when I come to my team sports, the more brutal contact sports, so to speak, are more my cup of tea. Um, well, of course he is because he's the short format captain, isn't he? He's Owen Morgan, and he's a centrally contracted player, so he's got to be showing his support for the kids that will be screwed over by the ECB in the next 5 years, no doubt. Um, no, in my opinion, the issues with cricket, not just in the UK, but globally, um, definitely in the last 20 or so years, there's a whole host of issues. A lot of it's to do with governance. TV rights is another big issue, and grassroots level, um, grassroots investment with cricket, in my opinion, could and should be better. In my opinion, could and should be better. Um, but go over the Atlantic, baseball's the sporting crisis. Baseball's the sporting crisis over the Atlantic. They've got a lockout with their Major League Baseball league. Fan base is shrinking. There's issues around the structure of contracts, TV rights, um, whole host of issues to do with baseball. Baseball's in a similar position to cricket over here. Major League Baseball in the US is in the same position with cricket over here. Uh, bad governance, um, issues that aren't being resolved, player unrest, um, poor financial management, a whole host of things. We'll see if the finals on free to air TV. We'll see. It depends also what time zone it is and where the finals being played. Mm, yeah. Right, I'm going to call it a night. I've got to be up early in the morning for work. But thank you for all your questions. Really appreciate it. And of course, we'll be following the Mason Greenwood situation. Um, um, and we'll see what happens with the Mason Greenwood situation and what the outcome or outcomes because there's more offences he's been arrested for, of the police investigation, um, and then if any more of his sponsors decide to pull their sponsorship. We know EA Sports have withdrawn him from their gaming products, and we know that obviously Nike have withdrawn their sponsorship, and Manchester United have suspended indefinitely. We'll wait to see what happens if there's any charges. I think personally he's going to get charged with all the offences he's been investigated for, and you don't ask for a second extension to question if there isn't significant amounts of evidence and the police believe he is a wider risk to the public or a flight risk if he was bailed. I think he will be charged and remanded personally, and I do think this is not just his ex-girlfriend raising, complaints against him. I actually think there may be other complainants, especially with the threats to kill. I think there may be other complainants against Mason Greenwood because there was rumours circulating um, last year, about 12 months ago, of Mason Greenwood being involved in something, and he possibly being that unnamed player in his late teens, early 20s, involved in some nefarious activity. And people go, oh, it's this guy, it's that guy, it's this guy, it's so and so, it's so and so. And Mason Greenwood's name kept cropping up on social media. Yes, Mason Greenwood has, I think, appeared for England. Very interesting that Man United have removed him from all their products. Very interesting because he hasn't been charged with anything yet. So that is very interesting that they have now removed his image from their branding, from their brand. I think they're in communication um, with the authorities, and I think it's looking likely that he's going to get charged and remanded. I would have thought because Man United said if it's suspended internally, which is fair. No further comment. We have suspended the player pending further investigations and further inquiries. That is fine. But then when Nike withdrew their sponsorship and EA Sports withdrew his likeness, facing public backlash, I would have thought. If they did nothing, they would face massive public backlash because of social media. We will see, but the fact that big companies are withdrawing his image from their brand, like trying to distance themselves from having him linked with their company, and they are big companies. The fact that Manchester United are now removing him from their product lines, his image, his name from shirts, says to me that they are liaising and they are being appraised of the situation by the relevant legal side of things. I think he's looking more dead cert than Benjamin Mendy, in my opinion. And the Mendy situation has gone quiet, although he's had an extra charge. He's now had 4 charges put against him, so he's facing 4 counts of rape or sexual assault. Mason Greenwood is now facing counts of threats to kill, which is ironically on the charge sheet is, I think, even more serious than just beating his missus up. Or he's now being charged with another count of rape. So we've gone up from assault and that. If he gets found not guilty, wonder what will happen about all this. The fact he's had the police are now have had 2 extensions to question, in my opinion. I think in my mind, he's looking certain to be charged and remanded. They've been granted extensions by the magistrate. The fact that he's been rearrested as well, which I think there's going to be more people coming forward with I think it's not just one individual who's made an allegation against him. Yes, there is footage of the car incident. There is footage of the car incident. Depending on, there's a lot going around social media which could be very bad in this case, because that means there's video and audio evidence out there in the public domain, which I think has forced the police's hand into doing something. I I don't think this situation moves as quickly if those images and audio is not in the public domain. I don't think the situation moves as quickly, in my opinion. Like the Benjamin Mendy situation, some of the offences were from 2020. He doesn't get arrested until 2021, even though they may have been investigating him and building a case to then question and charge. Because that's all come out in the public domain early hours Sunday morning, it's moved very, very quickly. Um, no, in that case, that could be attempted murder or attempt to injure, which is a higher, you know, threat to the person. If he's actually attempted to deliberately crash the vehicle, yeah, attempt to murder them. That'd be attempted murder or murder suicide. That would be not just threat to kill, threatening to kill is I'm going to kill you. You know that, and then is an attempt to commit an act of violence against the person. That's attempted murder, basically, um, or intent to wound or injure using. Then they'll have to figure out what class in the vehicle as a weapon, which they can do. From the sounds of it, I think his ex girlfriend may not be the only complainant against him. Um, but clearly, from what we can gather, and we're obviously assuming this is a domestic violence situation, which generally has a very low conviction rate, and which is a problem. Um, but this, yeah, clearly looks like a domestic violence situation. It's been happening. This hasn't happened just overnight. This has been a long-standing issue, um, because a relationship doesn't get violent overnight. It doesn't just go right one day. You're happy as Larry. Every couple has disagreements and arguments. It's healthy to actually have a disagreement and an argument. It is actually healthy. Trust me, it is. But you don't just go one day. I'm just going to batter my girlfriend, or I'm going to batter my husband or my wife. It doesn't just happen. There's normally a trigger, and then it builds. It just doesn't happen just like that. So it slowly builds, and then it gets increases in intensity and becomes worse as time goes on. Um, the fact that there's accusations and he's been investigated for sexual assault and rape, however, that then again doesn't just happen overnight. You just don't go one day and go, I'm going to do this. Basically, these kind of situations, one, the perpetrator has been the victim of similar situations when they were a kid or they were a younger person, so they see that as acceptable. Or two, narcissistic behavior. It starts where you push the boundaries, you find out what you can get away with, and once they haven't punished you for getting away with it, you just go through the roof. Or three, um, constant rewarding bad behavior. Because, and this is where I think football, predominantly as a sport, although other sports as well also have this issue. A lot of these young men, especially, although now more women are in professional sport as well, because a lot of these young people are given a lot of cash and a lot of spotlight very, very young, and very, very quickly. And they're basically told they're invincible. They're going to be superstars. People on their beck and call. You know, um, they're put on this pedestal really high, and they get a superiority complex. They become quite arrogant, and when you're not disciplined, when you're not disciplined and being told you can't do that, you can't do that. When your bad behaviour is constantly rewarded because there's no one to keep you in check, get attitudes like this where you believe, you're arrogant, you are, untouchable, you can do what you want, I'm special, look at me, you must love me. Um, the pumping up of the ego, I'm going to say pump up the ego. I'm Superman. I don't know why I'm doing all the bloody movements, but basically, yeah, they, and it's also the people surrounding. Yes, the agents and the hangers on and the so-called advisors and all that. Um, it does trouble me severely. It does. Um, this is not an isolated incident. It's not. Robinho is another one currently. Benjamin Mendy. You could argue the Ched Evans situation. Now he was found not guilty at retrial. However, it's still. I think they are. Yes, I think United are to blame. It doesn't matter who the main manager was. Okay, it was Solskjaer towards the end. Before that, Mourinho was actually the manager in charge when he was coming through and I think getting his first appearances for the club. Um, and yeah, he wasn't punished for his escapade in Reykjavik. He was told he was sent home from the England camp and wasn't internally punished by the club for bringing the game into disrepute. This is another thing. It doesn't matter if you're on international club duty when you misbehave. When you are representing. No, I think no. Mourinho was when he signed his first contract at Man United. Mourinho was the manager. Solskjaer had been brought in as interim at that point. Um, he signed his first. He played his first senior game under Solskjaer, but his first senior contract was actually signed when Mourinho was still manager. So, and Mourinho has said things about attitude, and hence why he didn't get an appearance under Mourinho, even in the League Cup or FA Cup. He made his debut under Solskjaer, but Mourinho was the manager who signed his first senior contract at 16. Just putting it out there. And Mourinho never brought him into the League Cup squad or the FA Cup squad and gave him minutes. Um, but his agent wanted him on the books. The club wanting to keep him as a possible loanee kind of move, kind of thing, use him as a bit of transfer bait. They developed him. They want to get some money back, so he signs a contract. So obviously Mourinho is actually ironically a very good judge of character. Regardless of his managerial techniques and his tactics, Mourinho normally is a very good judge of character when he goes, that guy's a problem. That guy's not a team player. That guy's an issue. Mourinho generally gets it right in that regard. Um, oh, absolutely. Um, uh, absolutely, the players are definitely got to. I think we clearly know there's been player unrest in that dressing room for several years now. And we're going back pre-Solskjaer and pre-Mourinho. We're going back to David Moyes, Van Gaal, even Ferguson. I think there was a growing uh, unrest within playing group. Um, I think there has to be question marks over the culture of the club, considering what's happened with Ryan Giggs as well. And he was interim manager for a while there, and he's still, even though he's officially the Wales international manager, even though he's suspended while his legal stuff's going on. You have to question the culture within the dressing room post Ferguson. And you could look at Ryan Giggs and go, hang on a second. You've also got allegations of domestic violence. And Ryan Giggs would be a role model for a Mason Greenwood. Absolutely. Mixed race. Ryan guess what Ryan Giggs? Mixed race. Mason Greenwood. Mixed race. Yeah. Um, so you could definitely, you know, and Ryan Giggs, look at his personal life since, um, over the last few years with that super injunction, the affairs coming out, the domestic violence allegations, the trial. Um, yeah, the Benjamin Mendy situation, the and we can go back all the way to Stan Collymore in the mid to late 90s with Eureka Johnson. Um, it it wouldn't surprise me if there is more to come out. I mean, Paul Gascoigne famously beating up his wife. But with Gaza, I do think there is a lot of mitigating circumstances with Paul Gascoigne. He has actually held his hand up and said, I've got a problem." Um, Paul Gascoigne, there is a lot of mitigating circumstances with Paul Gascoigne, absolutely. At the same time, that doesn't excuse what he's done. At the same time, the sport has failed him. His teammates, his managers, his agents, his coaches have failed him in not guiding him into a positive light. Paul Merson, as I say, has been very open about his alcohol, gambling, and drug problems. And again, I think the sport has failed him. And Paul Merson is one of the reasons why Tony Adams actually set up um, his addiction foundation, because his former teammate Paul Merson went through what he went through. I think Paul Merson was actually his first client as well. Um, so there's obviously an issue with drug use, recreational and alcohol use, and there's also an issue with gambling, and then there's an issue with attitudes and violence towards women within the sport. And yes, there are the sex tape with Valbuena and Benzema and the blackmail trial and all that. And Valbuena's career's gone down the toilet because of it. He claims he was blacklisted, and he's ended up playing. He's playing professionally in Greece now, but he claims he was blacklisted by the national side, etc., etc. And it's the French journal who's exposed a lot of what's going on with French players. And yes, the Karim Benzema, the David De Gea situation with Iker Muniain, and I forget the other Spanish players. A few other Spanish players involved over in Spain, and with alleged sex workers and porn stars and all sorts. And there are other people involved who have gone to prison and been charged with offences. Um, but yes, there is. I think this is not This is not just isolated to European or South American football. This problem. It's not. Um, there is definitely a lot of issues at play here. Um, Definitely, a lot of these young players are getting too much money too young, too soon, and they are surrounded by some very dodgy characters. Um, very dodgy characters, and we have to acknowledge that. We have to say, yes, these are grown men who have made some really bad decisions and done some bad things, but then they are also surrounded by some not very nice individuals who, you know, aren't necessarily acting in the best interests of their so-called friend. Um, we've seen it in American football. We've seen it in rugby league. We've seen it in rugby union. We we're now seeing it in rugby. I think both codes of rugby are going the same way as football in the regard of the misbehaviour of players. Um, Definitely, that is some concern that I have going forward. And I think it's a legitimate concern. Um, Try and find all of what my friends generally. I think there's a fair bit about the that Samis Dwayne has basically said, hang on, Frank Ribery, when he had allegations against him um, as well a few years back. Um, so yeah, there's Van Persie's allegations against him. Um, there's some very high profile players who've had some very serious allegations. Ronaldo's had a culture issue within primarily football, but I think in professional sport, um, with attitudes towards women, with um, definite misbehaviour that if you or I were like were to um, get in the kind of trouble that these guys are, we are being, our work's being contacted. We're being suspended, lose our jobs. I would say definitely a code of conduct. Whether it's a one strike policy, I would think it would be mitigating circumstances in that regard. But I would definitely consider if I was in the FA, definitely a code of conduct in regards to player behaviour. Um, Following on from what happened during the lockdown, with players breaching the lockdown rules and getting caught on camera being stupid, or even posting on their own social media accounts being absolute tits. And that's not saying that technically on like, you know anything illegal, non-lockdown pending, but some of their antics, that I think there does need to be a code of conduct to put in place. These are role models for young men and women, and kids. You know, mm, they need to do better. I mean, yes, obviously they are human beings. We are flawed with our personalities. Of course, everyone's flawed. No one's perfect. Um, Young men, occasionally on the old drink, will get up to some mischief. We've all got to make mistakes. We've all been young men when it comes to the discipline side of things. We're like, I don't know, getting a bit drunk and spending a night in cells for drunk and disorderly is one thing. Um, Domestic violence is and sexual violence is something else. Um, but some of these grown men are coming across as man children. Like they've never. So, and I do feel a bit of sympathy for football players in general, because a lot of them they live their lives in the spotlight from a very young age, and they're not given an opportunity to develop, as a mature adult. Um, you know, um, and yeah, maturity has got a lot to do with it, but they are in the spotlight from a very young age. Um, I mean, they're giving interviews. They're being interviewed by the press, and there's speculation about them when they're like 15, 16 years old. This kid's going to be the next big thing. And so there's already a lot of pressure put upon a very young individual who's still developing as a human being. Their body's going through the hormone changes, and they're still developing as they're still going to school. They're still in education at this point, and they're put under this spotlight and this pressure very, very young. And yeah, unfortunately, there is issues there. It's the same with rugby union as well, with certain individual players, and rugby league as well in this country. And then you look further afield at like the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, Major League Baseball to a certain extent, Major League Soccer. And again, depending on where you ended up getting drafted, what team you get drafted to, and where you end up playing, there's a lot of media spotlight. There's a lot of speculation. Um, and there's a lot of pressure put upon these predominantly young men, but women's professional sports coming on leaps and bounds. There is a lot of pressure put upon these young adults, these teenagers and young adults. So they're in their late teens, early 20s, and with that, with the big salaries as well, there is a lot of pressure, and again they're put on this pedestal, and the media build them up. Do no wrong, they're superstars. They're our modern day gladiators, so to speak. And yeah, as soon as they do one little misdeed, they shake that pedestal. But at the same time, when some of them are very mature, there are some very, very mature, sports stars out there who are in their early 20s who have the maturity of a 45, 50-year-old who's been and done it all, you know, that's taken early retirement, that kind of thing. Some of them have got a very mature, a lot of them have a very mature head on their shoulders. I'm not denying that. I think Marcus Rashford is a very mature individual. I think Raheem Sterling, for all the crap he gets in the media, ironically, he is actually a very mature individual off the field, um, in his private life. Absolutely. Um, However, Mason Greenwood, I think there has been behavioural issues. I think he hasn't been adequately punished for his misdeeds. So let's say breaching curfew, the Reykjavik situation. So this bad behaviour has been allowed to continue. He's not been punished, which is all basically rewarding bad behaviour. And part of that is, I will sign you to a 4-year contract worth big money. So not only has he not been adequately punished for his lockdown breaches and breaches of team discipline and poor attitude, he's been rewarded for all that by signing this massive 4-year contract just days ago, weeks ago, even, I think in the summer. Not that long ago. We're talking a few months ago, big contract signed, massive extension, big money. And we're literally talking like a few months ago. He's, yeah. So if the club were aware of any behavioural issues or any off field issues, they have just rewarded him rather than disciplining him and saying, look, you want to continue to play for this football club, or if you want to continue to be a professional athlete, you've got to adhere to certain standards that we expect you to uphold. Instead of not coming down tough, but giving him the right guidance, they've not adequately, in my opinion, punished him, and guided him in the right way, and then they basically rewarded bad behaviour with a massive contract. Lo and behold, he's now in serious crap with the police. And yes, he's just turned 20, so he's young. But I know I've come across many a teenager and many a 20-year-old who are very, very mature. And I've come across some very immature guys in their late 30s, early 40s, who are overgrown man children. Mason Greenwood seems to be an entitled, overgrown man child, um, in my opinion. And a lot of, and I do think there needs to be a big conversation had within football and within professional sport, saying we have got to change our attitudes. We have got to seriously. Jude Bellingham is 10 years. Oh look, Jude Bellingham again. We can always criticise players for their playing style, how they fit into a team, but I don't think you can criticise certain players for how they can conduct themselves away from work, basically. So in their private lives, we can criticise like players like Jordan Henderson for being a bit of a one-dimensional box-to-box midfielder. Off the field, from everything I can gather, he's an exemplary individual. We can go Harry Kane. Okay, on the field, he's divisive. Is he a brilliant striker or is he overrated? Off the field, again, Harry Kane. Regardless of what you think of him as a player, as a person, exemplary individual, hard-working, exemplary individual, family man. Off the field, on the field, you can criticise Harry Kane and his style of play. Fair enough. Harry Maguire, however, yes, he did get arrested, obviously. So off the field, Harry Maguire's had a bit of negative press with some of his antics off the field. Okay. And you can look at Jack Grealish off the field. Yeah, he's had some indiscretions off the field, breach of lockdown, basically not been too sensible. Um, and I do think there is a culture issue at Man City. Because you've not only got Benjamin Mendy now in prison awaiting trial, Kyle Walker's had multiple off-field incidents. Morally, legally, Kyle Walker is question marks over Kyle Walker, in my opinion. No, but then if you're sending minders to them, I think that's again treating them like children. I just think they need to lay out the code of conduct and stop rewarding bad behaviour by the failure to punish for some of the antics. Bring the entitlement down a notch. I think they need to bring in like a sort of an entry level contract kind of thing, where if you're under the age of 21, you can't sign for more than a certain amount per week wages. So cap the under 21s contract or the under 25s contracts a little bit. Just I think maybe if you are signing your first professional contract, you've still got to, I don't know, work in the community, work in the club shop, for example, actually do some volunteer, something to make them live in the real world, while they're a junior player on the books. So yeah, make as part of their contract, you've got to work in the club shop on non-match days and non-training days. You've got to work in the club shop, or you've got to, learn a trade at college, say post career. If you don't make it, as a football player, you've got the real world. You've got some grounding, grounded, some good grounding there. I think working in the club shop is brilliant for them, because then they actually are in retail. So when things are getting a bit shit, they're going to get a fair bit of crap from boys. I want to refund, this shirt doesn't fit me. Um, you know, let's see what's going on with Mason Greenwood's father and all this. Um, what we know about Mason Greenwood's parents. Well, apparently his parents are yet to comment on the allegations against him. Now, whether they've been advised legally to stay quiet or not, I don't know. But this was yesterday. Mason Greenwood's career hangs in the balance following allegations of his ex-girlfriend. Acceptable. The football community sympathised with Robson and commended her for her courage or petition for action against Mason from authorities in the Manchester United hierarchy. Mason Greenwood's parents, Melanie Hamilton and Andrew Greenwood, are yet to comment on the allegations against him. He was born on the 1st of October in 2001 in Bradford. His father, obviously, is of Jamaican origin. They supported their children's sporting ambitions. His sister is a successful track and field athlete. Okay, so his dad is actually an engineer. I just find it very interesting with the statement coming out from Harriet Robson, his ex-girlfriend's parents, saying that she didn't want the photos and audio released. which says to me that she's obviously sent. So yeah, so basically, his father is an engineer, and his mum is a stay-at-home parent. So his family aren't like a broken family. They're from humble means, but they're not. Um, yeah, I'm not overly sold on that dad's statement. I've seen it as well. Basically, let's have a look. Let's have a look at his biography. Yeah, so his family values sports and athletics. Uh, so yeah, he was scouted very very young by Manchester United. He was put into the development school at Halifax. Uh, he used to turn up early for practice. Rapid implementation of any trick he was shown. Da, 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 da. He broke the 100-meter record for his age group for Great Britain. He also did athletics. I've been to other countries, but I haven't watched any sport in any other countries. Um, so he's he's here we go. 2018 was the year which Greenwood began training with Manchester's first team when Mourinho was still manager, and was handed a place on the bench for United's final Champions League group game against Valencia by then Jose Mourinho. The then 17-year-old went to travel with United's first team on their pre-season tour of the United States and made a non-competitive debut as a substitute for Luke Shaw, United's 1-1 draw against Club America. Um, he was never used for a major match in the next 5 months. He finally made his competitive debut against PSG in a 3-1 win. 17 years and 150. He was the second youngest player to represent Man United in European competition, as well as the youngest in the Champions League era. Um, by uh, yeah, no, his father has a pretty is a pretty humble bloke. His mum's a pretty humble woman. So there's he's got an older sister who's a track and field athlete. Um, so yeah, there's not a lot really in there on that one. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. But Yeah, as I say, in saying that, I think it's fair to say that whatever's occurred, it's not because of his family upbringing. Um, I would say it's not because of his upbringing. Then his upbringing seems pretty humble. A lot of emphasis put on on sport. Um, dad hardworking, mum stay at home mum supportive of her kids. So it's a very humble, positive background. So his background doesn't say like he's got an absent father or a bad family background in the sense of a broken home. Um, so in regards to what's happened, something's obvious. This is we shall see what occurs. The statement from his ex girlfriend's dad is a bit odd to me, saying that she didn't want all that up in the open, but that says to me that we will see what happens. We will see if like she's obviously given statements. They've obviously given extra time to question. I think he's in a bit of. I think that his parents saying nothing. I think yes, they probably are. They're probably in shock. Um, you know, they've also probably been legally advised not to say anything. Um, quite frankly, at this time, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, they've been advised by their legal team to obviously say nothing. Um, so it's a difficult one. Um, but yeah, Mason Greenwood is a two-footed player who technically he's a very gifted, talented individual when it comes to what he does on the field. Um, and that's for plain for all to see that he's definitely got he's a very talented individual. In regards to what's going on right now, it is deeply troubling, especially with his humble background and a very stable family life. It is definitely very troubling what how quickly this is blown up. Now, you could argue the people around him guiding him, other than his family. There's there's definitely question marks over some of the issues there. And so yeah, they're definitely you have to question then the culture within the club. Absolutely. But then when he's away on international duty, be it with the youth level teams or the main national side, you have to question, okay, some of his international teammates as well and their culture and attitude. So yeah, people like Kyle Walker and people, you know, who've had a few indiscretions off the field, you then have to question, okay, have they had some negative influences upon him? And what, yeah, you could argue what's their influences, how that has definitely, you know, um, how that has impacted him. And then the other people who start surrounding themselves around him as well. Um, but definitely, I think is he a talented football player? Yes, but that pales into insignificance at this point. Um, we'll see what the outcome is. It's not looking good. And from looking at it, he's he's a very young man who's not had a lot of life experience away from the game. So he hasn't, in my experience, reading that article, the articles that I read had a lot of experience, um, you know, away from football. Um, you know, from a very very young age, he was already being um, scouted by Man United. So he's been earmarked for their academy since he was a young kid. Um, so you then have to question the youth football process that's in place, and the processes they put in place, and the checks and balances they put in place, and then how they prepare these kids for a life in the game. Um, and a lot of them are overgrown man children, and the audio recording. Uh, well, that's a difficult one. I would rather have. Well, it's a difficult one. I think on a pure footballing standpoint, obviously you want him in the team, but then you've got to look at the wider picture, and I think a line needs to be drawn in the sand. And if he is found guilty, he may not be allowed to travel overseas, for example, with any guilty conviction for his probation. So on that kind of standpoint, I don't think he plays in an England jersey again. Um, I honestly think it's career. Yeah, yeah, I think it's career done. I've seen what people put on social media about like Man United fans, basically saying they don't want him to play for the club again. Um, Non-Man United fans saying if he's found not guilty but he's released by Man United, I don't want my club to sign him. So there's other fans of other clubs saying look, if he was available and Man United terminate his contract and he's available to be signed, let's say in the summer, for example, we don't want nothing to do with him. And then there's those fans who don't care who he plays for, but follow the national side, regardless of their club affiliation, going, we don't want him to wear the three lions. Um, you know, now, from reading about his background, it seems like he's had a very good upbringing, but at the same time, he hasn't had the right life experiences to prepare him for basically being an adult, basically. Um, so while his family have been very supportive of his sporting dreams and have encouraged him, which is the right thing to do, like encourage your kids to follow their interests and do something they enjoy, be it sport or you know getting into the right career, like being an engineer or going into teaching or whatever, or joining the army or whatever career your kid decides to do. So very humble, structured family, family that are very supportive of his career choice, which is fine. It is very surprising how this has happened. However, then I would say that what has happened is clearly since he's been involved in the professional side of the game, you have to ask questions then, in my opinion, of the role the club has played in his character development as a young adult, because they've basically been his employer since he was, what, 16, 17, like as a senior employment thing. So he's out of the academy, he's gone, they support him during his school as well, the Halifax Academy. His family have decided to move to the Manchester area um, to support their son and technically their daughter as well, who's going to university. So both their kids are you know, of a sporting nature. He's then in the Man United system, senior system, which then raises questions. Okay, so he's surrounded by older individuals, older than the age of 19, 20, senior players. They're going to have a big bearing on his development, so his work colleagues, so to speak. Um, if you are a young, impressionable teenager, basically, you're going to want to be involved in all the activities, and there's not a lot of kids the same age or in your workplace. Basically, you are one of the younger lads within the environment, and so yes, you have to ask them about the culture within the dressing room. Absolutely. Um, so the senior leadership figures, so your Pogba's, your Maguires, Ronaldo, obviously recently this season. Um, your Phil Jones. I mean, he's been injured a lot. Your Luke Shaws, your De Gea's. Uh, you then have to um, raise the question about the influence, not only the other players but also the coaches and the non-coaching staff in the code of conduct. You know, looking out for their employees, because there's a duty of care to your employees with their mental and physical well-being. So from the sounds of it, his background is his family background, supportive, structured, loving family, which then does raise the concern. Okay, this behaviour is a learned behaviour from the football club, from his teammates, and going out when they go out to the pub or the nightclub and things like that when they are on the socialising side of things. That then yes um, raises concerns about the culture within the club. And then when he's on international duty as well, the culture within the international setup. Because I don't remember Southgate. I don't remember hearing Southgate's interviewing game, but I remember there was a lot of question marks about Southgate's comments in regards to Mason Greenwood. So I'm going to have a look at this quickly. Southgate. Um, let's have a look at Southgate's comments on Mason Greenwood quickly. Was this 4th of November? Um, Gareth Southgate said that Mason Greenwood opted out of England duty for the first half of the season, having scored in each of the opening three Premier League matches. Eyebrows were raised when the 20-year-old was omitted by the Three Lions with the September international break. So I think that there was knowledge of some of the issues that Mason Greenwood was facing at the time. I think people were aware of allegations against Mason Greenwood long before his girlfriend posted or allegedly had her phone hacked. Her Instagram um, was posted on social media. With me, as a player, I thought he was young. He was talented. In the last FA Cup game against Aston Villa, he had the best chances apart from the goal for Man United. He was getting in the right places. His final shots were a little bit on the weak side. Looked like they were lacking a little bit of confidence and a little bit of. So in the third round win against Villa, he was United's best player. He was making the right runs. He was in the space, creating chances. The match reviews up on the channel. Let's. Gareth Southgate says that Mason Greenwood opted out of England duty for the first half of the season. Player opting out for their national side, it's unheard of. Apart from if you are called Chris Sutton. Having scored in each of the opening three Premier League matches, eyebrows were raised when he was omitted during the September international break. He was also overlooked last month, which was the October, and missed out on the selection in the November break. It was a decision a bit about which United supporters vented their frustrations, especially given how well he had performed um, this season up to the point, which he was playing quite well. Um, Read the statement. However, Southgate has revealed an agreement between himself, the player, and the FA, John McDermott, director. Southgate said, "We had a discussion before the camp in September. We came to an agreement. John McDermott and myself went to United, had a good chat with Mason and his family, and we agreed that we would park this until next year. Basically, he wouldn't play in the autumn games, but he'll be back in um, um, for the later international breaks, later qualifiers, and friendlies before the World Cup and the Nations League. If he establishes himself more regularly in Man United's team, then he's going to be very close in the squad or England team. He recognises that. So there was discussions between United's hierarchy and England about, okay, do we overplay him? Do we allow him to develop? Does he get a bit more game time? That kind of thing. He wants to play for England. He is clear about that. We've worked with lots of young players and understand this journey that they're going on. It's our job to help these boys progress and develop aligned with their clubs. If he recognises if he doesn't get it right over a longer period, doesn't nail down the situation at the club, then maybe there isn't an England career anyway. This is his and his family's only chance to make a success of his career, and they're understandably a lot more cautious than we might be, because obviously his family have obviously been very, very, very supportive of his career up to this point. Obviously, he hasn't had any other kind of options other than football in his life. Remember that he's not played in the non-league and therefore had to be a part-time player and actually have a part-time job. It's not like the old FA Cup third round, giant killing where the non-league side's got a plumber, a postie, a painter, a legal clerk, and all that. He's never actually had anything other than football in his life. We believe he's good enough to be with us. I think I'll probably say as much as appropriate. Well, there's not wanting to rush a young player and allowing a young player to develop and get game time and play. But when I saw the Aston Villa Man United FA Cup third round match a couple of weeks back, I thought he was one of the bright sparks for an otherwise uninspiring United performance. I felt he played well. Um, he did get his shots on target. They weren't the most powerful shots, but he created opportunities, hit the target with them, which was better than some of his teammates did, apart from the goal. He was making the right runs. He was making the space. And I thought he had a decent performance and an otherwise scrappy United team performance. I thought he was a bright spark for an otherwise not great team performance. In the way that that statement was worded back in November, which I've read the statement now from Southgate. I think obviously Mason Greenwood's family are a bit concerned about the direction he's taking, which is fair. They sound like very grand individuals who obviously want the best for their son. And obviously they are fully aware that Mason Greenwood's had no experience in the real world other than the football, so he hasn't obviously had a job other than the football. So if it wasn't his football career to work out, obviously they're concerned about the direction he would take as going forward as an adult. From the sounds of it, they want to get his club development and game time at club level right. There's nothing that hints at behavioural issues. It's more about getting game time and making it as a player and being consistent as a player and developing as a player. The concern that I then have would be if they were aware of any behavioural issues, and I use that quotation marks, any allegations and any rumours about his off-field dramas that we now know are in place. They've hit it very, very well. which is concerning. Now, Mason Greenwood himself opted out of was the I read, which I heard after the Euros, Greenwood didn't want to be in the squad if he wasn't going to play. Yeah, why get called up if you're not going to get game time? But at the same time, you are training with the players. Um, I've read articles about other players who've been called up to senior squads and international squads, um, and they've just been happy to train with the senior squad and get that knowledge and experience of the training methods, what is expected of the senior players, and then they take that back to club side or their youth club setup, and you know. From what I gathered from that article in the Manchester Evening Standard, he decided to opt out. The FA, his family, and the club all had meetings about, okay, we're going to monitor his progress at club level going forward. Let's get him a consistent run in the club side, but that's then up to the manager to go, I want to give this player a consistent run, because you can't just say to the manager, I want this, an international manager, to a club manager, I want this player playing all the time if he's not proving himself in training, or he's not playing in form. The club manager has got to do what's best for his group of players and his owners and his club with results. And if that player being playing in that position is actually affecting the result of the team winning or losing, then you're going to drop the player. Would Greenwood have wanted to be away from this girl for that long if he went to the Euros? Just a thought. Well, in a domestic violence controlling situation, again, we're speculating that this is not a one-off incident. I'm looking at some of the date stamps and some of her Instagram posts. This goes back to 2020. You know, so therefore, I think this is a long-term abusive relationship. This hasn't happened overnight. There's obviously been issues for quite some time. I don't believe she was his current girlfriend at the time all this got put on the internet. I do think that obviously that relationship has died. But with the further arrest, the rearrest, should I say, even though he's actually still in police custody, as soon as they release him, they rearrest him. That's basically how it works. You bail, oh, no, you're released and you're arrested again. It's just a formality, it's a technical formality. Something's obviously gone very, very wrong over the last, I'm going to say 2 years. Something's obviously gone very, 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 very wrong. And I don't think it matters that it was Mourinho, Solskjaer, or Ranić as the manager. Something has happened for this, what appeared to be a very young, talented, grounded individual who seemed to be very respectful, hardworking, to turn up early for training, worked hard at school, worked hard in the youth setups to progress very rapidly. Something has obviously happened in the last 2.5 years time frame to completely change how his attitude is, his clearly morals, because he's obviously been brought up in a very humble, respectful manner by his parents. Something has obviously happened to change him as an individual in the last 2.5 years. Because what as like if I the amount of sport I watch and the amount of interviews I've seen where I've seen lots of interviews with players who are now retired or near retirement, senior players, and they talk about their career and getting their first call up to a senior squad or a representative squad. So between rugby league or rugby union, you're called up to the main senior squad, and even though you don't get game time, you're training with like the superstars of your sport, and they're like, I can't believe I'm here. That kind of response, I loved it. It was like I'm training with my idols. They might be 10, 15 years senior in the game. I was surprised he didn't want to go to that training camp and take on board the lessons and work with, you know, other other players. There would have been other Man United players there, so it wouldn't have been like he didn't know anyone. Um, yeah, no, I unfortunately it's a serious thing and it's a culture thing, Dan. It's not an isolated incident. Um, it's clearly it's it's not just an isolated incident with this one player, and it's not just isolated to English football. Um, and it's a debate I think we've got to have. I think we've got to have this tough discussion because this situation isn't going away, and there's definitely been a change in attitude in the last 5 to 10 years in regard to um, discussing domestic violence and how 1 in 7 men are victims of it, and the conviction rate's been so stupidly low. Um, the 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 England press conference, I do sort of remember this, and I don't think a player's private personal life um, needs to be in a press conference, especially if they're a young player. Do you still live with your parents? Who do you live with? Like, there needs to be a boundary between professional and private life. Now, regardless of what Greenwood's been accused of, I think sometimes the media, there is a boundary, there's a line. Um, I've seen coaches and players lose it with journalists during press, especially coaches going, "Well, this is completely off topic. I'm not here to discuss this. I'm here to discuss my team selection, how the players played, how the opposition played. I'm not here to discuss the private lives of individuals." Um, you know, um, I think I think something's obviously happened at his time at Man United from when he signs his first senior contract under Mourinho and he's on the bench for the Champions League game against Valencia, all the way up to this weekend. There's definitely something with this individual player that has happened. Now, again, looking at his family background, it's nothing to do with his family. I think something has happened since he's been at Man United with some of the players he's been around and some of the individuals around the culture at the club. There is something wrong with the culture of the club. And it doesn't matter who the manager is. I think is key. I don't think it matters on the manager. I think it matters on the individuals around the club. And let's just leave it at that, really. But yes, there was a lot of players who misbehaved during the first lockdown. Jack Grealish misbehaved. Carl Walker misbehaved constantly throughout lockdown. Moses Keane misbehaved. We know about what's happened, what Benjamin Mendy did during 2020 and into 2021 on a 12-month period. We know that the charges levelled against him. Um, but yeah, something I remember that press conference where they were asking about his personal life, and I'm thinking that's got nothing to do with how he's playing on the field, how he's developing at Man United, and why he's been selected for the national setup for his first cap. That's got nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. You know, the only time I think professional and personal life should cross is if like your boss goes, okay, have you got any kids? Are there any health issues? Are you a care worker? Does that affect your ability to do your job? And you say, oh, I'm going to need a certain amount of time off because I have a medical, have to do this on a monthly basis. Da, 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 da. That Obviously, there's been rumours circulating about a lot of players over the last. I'm going to say 2 years basically, because obviously next month it has been 2 years since we entered lockdown. There have been a lot of rumours circulating about several high-profile players um, and their behaviour and their antics. And there's been, players in the press being caught out breaching lockdown. Grealish and Moses Keane and Kyle Walker obviously being the prime examples of players misbehaving. And of course, there was the Reykjavik incident. The Reykjavik incident, I think, is the moment that questions have to be asked about his character development and and um and the same with Foden as well. Phil Foden, Foden and Greenwood. That incident in Reykjavik, which we've covered before, the antics in the hotel with the blondies, as I call it, the ladies, breaching team curfew, breaching the COVID regulations, the lack of respect for authority. And me and my neighbour Adam is a Man United fan. We always have the footy banter. When we both finish work, 'cause he works different hours to me, and all that. But we do have a fair bit of banter um, in regards to this. There were rumours circulating that Mason Greenwood was one of the players um, accused. There was an unnamed player from a Manchester-based club that had some accusations against them floating around on the social media about 12 months ago. Um, yeah, in regards to the Iceland incident, whether it was pre-planned or spur of the moment, it doesn't really matter. In my opinion, it's basically lads on holiday. Basically, it's what you get with the lads on tour, kind of lads holiday to Greece or Spain. We've seen all the antics, and the drink kind of culture. As a parent, how do you tell your kid? I don't know. I don't know how you sort of break it to like your 8 or 9 year old who idolises these players and tell him that this guy is actually not. It's a difficult one. I know I come from a sports mad family, um, and quite a sports family as well. Yeah. I think I've been watching sports since I was like 2, 3 years old. Um, I don't know. Why has the pandemic brought all the bad habits and players misbehaving? Well, when you've got normally when you've got a busy 24-hour news schedule, everything's happening. There never lots of big things happening, active 24/7 society. A lot of the bad behaviour gets missed. I would say this has highlighted those individual players who've got a bad attitude and bad discipline and who are the troublemakers. Because we're in lockdown, player misbehaves in lockdown kind of thing. Big news because apart from lockdown, not a lot's really happening. So when the players were breaching lockdown in 2020, the general thing was you got your daily briefing from the government. So over in the US, you would have had Donald Trump and now President Biden, state governor, depending where you live. Over here, we had the Prime Minister and then you've got the devolved governments of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. You would have the daily briefings or the weekly briefing, and not a lot really happening. No sporting events taking place. Um, not Most of it was to do with the lockdown measures. So the furlough scheme, the furlough assistance companies, those people who are allowed to work, classed as a key worker, me, so I had to go to work every day. But other than that, not a lot really happening. So when like an individual player was misbehaving and got caught out breaching the lockdown or misbehaving, it was a big thing. These are big, well-known public figures caught misbehaving makes news headlines, and otherwise there's not a lot to talk about. So that this did highlight those players who have bad attitudes, bad behaviour, misbehaving regularly, that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, Kyle Walker getting caught out twice, Moses Keane, Jack Grealish, they all were caught out doing stuff, being drunk. Like Jack Grealish pissed out of his head driving his car. Kyle Walker, yes, some interesting antics involving drugs and ladies of the night with Kyle Walker, prostitutes. Uh, Moses Keane had a house party. Um, I would say I think if you're used to living a very active lifestyle and going out, going to training, being active, so you're training 3-4 nights a week, you're playing twice a week. So your job is very physically demanding, high energy levels. So you are very regimented in what you do. Then if you're very an outdoorsy type of person, which obviously if you are a football player, you're going to be a very active individual. When you're suddenly locked up in your house or your apartment or flat for we call it flats, you call it apartments for weeks on end, which they were. The first 6 weeks, unless you were a key worker, you were literally told you were not allowed to work. All you can do is go to the shops to buy supplies, and that is it. Unless you've got a medical, that is it. Medicine and food and drink, that is all you can do. You can only go out to the shops and an hour of exercise. That is it. That's all you're allowed to do. And most of them behaved. Most behaved. But we had similar things in Australia with the rugby league players, with Nathan Cleary and the TikTok video. We had barbecue gate. We had Josh Adokar and Latrell Mitchell with the quad bikes and the unlicensed firearms out in the bush. So there were incidents in Australia as well. So yeah, when your job is a very physically demanding but very outdoor activity kind of thing, to be told that you can't go outside, can't do your go to training, you can't do your normal regimented routine, which you would normally do. Yeah, you will definitely get up to no good because that regimented routine generally keeps you on the straight and narrow. And what I found with when I was off in the summer for my last job when I had my motorcycle accident and my other related health issues, my mind, I was climbing the walls in my flat. I spent 2.5 months pretty much not doing anything. First 2.5 weeks, I left the flat once. I left the flat once in 2.5 weeks, and my mental health deteriorated very, very badly. Um, my physical health deteriorated very, very badly because my mental health was affected, and I was very, very ill. Um, so I can only imagine what those these high energy individuals, they live a high energy lifestyle. Yes, they got a lot of money, and of course they like to throw their cash around, buy the expensive cars. But regardless of what they do as a job, they're in a very regimented weekly cycle of the year. So 9 months of the year they're wearing the club colours. 3 months of the year they're either wearing the international team, the national team. So they're travelling a lot. There's a lot of travel. They're always on the go. They're always half the time they're travelling. Right? There's only a couple months of the year where they're actually really really able to spend time with the wife and kids or the girlfriend or the family or their actual friends where they're actually um, human beings, basically. There's only about 6 to 8 weeks of the year a football player or rugby league player or rugby union player is actually an average human. These are human beings. I'm not saying they're perfect, But something has obviously happened for Mason Greenwood to go from this grounded young kid who's clearly talented and had a very solid upbringing to where he is now, and the situation he's in now. And I think a lot of it is to do with, yeah, the money, um, being thrust into the limelight at a very young age. There's a lot of media in his face. Um, and then some of the senior players, I think some of the senior people at the club have failed him, but he's failed himself. Let's make that clear. He made the decision, if he is found guilty, to do the things he's done. He is an adult. At the same time, people around him, so his teammates, agents, hangers on, those people trying to like get him signed up. I wouldn't. Well, I enjoy discussing my passion, which is sport. Now, football or soccer, as you would call it, is not actually my favourite sport. It's got the most videos and the most views on videos, the biggest playlist on the channel. It's not my favourite sport. Uh, like the interesting, I think, is it was my favourite sport growing up, but I've got a massive passion for rugby league. I've got a passion for rugby union. I've got a passion for ice hockey. Um, I've got a massive passion for motorsport, not F1, but I used to enjoy F1. But I've got a massive passion for motorsport, mostly endurance racing, motocross, and touring car and touring car, stock car racing like NASCAR and touring cars. But I've got a passion for motorcycles and car racing. Rallying is a big thing I'm very passionate about. Um, so there are some sports that I like more than others. And I've done a video of my favourite, I think about 4 years ago, my favourite sports, and I listed them, broke down why I like and why I place this sport higher than this sport, and why certain sports have dropped down my favourite sports list, and the reasons for that. Um, and I'm glad that I've, enlightened you a little bit and given you, a reason to go, I'm going to like this football, I'm going to follow this team, regardless of how well or how bad they're doing or what league they're in and all that. Um, and a lot of, and that's the joy of growing sport and growing, getting more fans, new fans to buy into the sport. Um, and yeah, I mean, Major League Baseball, I'm covering more videos. I'm going to do a video tomorrow because the Major League Baseball lockout has continued. Um, you should get some of your friends and work colleagues to watch some of my videos down. I think because you can say, I'll check this guy out. I watch this guy and because that's how the channel grows is by word of mouth. The algorithm doesn't want to do it for me, so I get my moderators and subscribers to add their friends and get their friends to give it a watch because the algorithm doesn't work. YouTube's algorithm, I've noticed over the last 18 months, the YouTube algorithm is actually working against smaller channels. Whereas 2018, 2019, the growth was huge. I think it was one last year where I had like 86 new subscribers, just like that. The algorithm hasn't worked over the last 18 months. No, I think, yeah, if you, I don't know what you and your friendship group sports wise discuss. Over in New York. Obviously, I know you're a massive baseball fan and you play it as well. Um, I will be doing a video tomorrow on Major League Baseball. I think I'll be doing that after the Africa Cup of Nations semi-final because talks have resumed in between the Major League Baseball Players Association and the league in trying to work out a solution to this lockout and end it. Um, um, So a friend of mine had a car accident last night, wrote his car off. He works two jobs and he fell asleep at the wheel and had an accident. So I was checking on him. Uh, So yeah, there is that. So yeah, like there's definitely I'm happy that like obviously um but yeah no if one of your bodies is one. I mean I think what one thing I mean I can't believe it's now like nearly 11:30 my time and I've got to be up in like 4 hours. Um, one of my buddies started following you a couple of weeks back. He was actually on my account a month or so back, and he was arguing with Southgate out about Trent, another right back. Oh, I think I remember that one. Um, Trippier, I think. Was it Kieran Trippier getting signed by Newcastle? And he's yeah, I think it was Kieran. I think I was arguing a little bit as well. And Luke Shaw and there's a couple other players. Um, yeah, no, I seem I seem to remember seem to remember um that live stream. No, get. Uh, I don't know what you get your buddies to sub. Um, absolutely, get some more of your buddies to subscribe. I mean, in regards to growing the channel, that's I think how we're going to have to do it, just to get some traction to grow the channel is get subscribers, to get friends and relatives of theirs to subscribe. I think that's the only way we're going to get some growth. I think and speed up the growth of the channel. But tomorrow I will be doing a Major League Baseball video because um, it'll be 2 months to the day. It'll be 2 months into the lockout, and the spring training is going to be meant to be starting in a couple of weeks. So we're 2 months into the lockout, and talks have only just resumed. So, and I'm very tentative in regards to the talks that the Players Association and the league are going to have. Now, as I said, I'm not a major baseball fan. I'm not a massive fan of baseball, and therefore I couldn't tell you the best player for the worst player, or the most overrated, or the best contract, or the worst contract. What I can say is, though, looking at the history of the league and the history of player and labour unrest and distrust between the owners and the Players Association, and the fact that I am surprised that they haven't had another lockout or player unrest. What I find interesting is the last time there was a player strike was the year before the Major League Soccer started up, and so I do honestly believe baseball does fear losing fans to a rival summer league in viewership and fandom and such like. So I do think the Major League Baseball for most of the last 25 years has been very mindful that a rival league takes place at the same time. A different sport, I know, with Major League Soccer, but a rapidly growing sport for viewership, TV rights, sponsorship, corporate money, the growth of that league, and therefore very mindful that they can't have labour unrest because of this rival league that's going to be competing for the fans' dollar at the time, and then 2020, the argument about return to play, Major League Soccer returns to play before the Major League Baseball. Um, a lot of the baseball players I play with are incredibly close-minded about European sports, it's baseball and football for most of them. That's it. That is a problem, a massive problem. Um, and that's an American issue. I honestly believe that most Americans haven't been overseas. Most Americans haven't left their home state. If they have been outside their hometown, their home city, they haven't left their home state. Um, I think that's that. Every other sports fan from North America that I've come across is willing to discuss, the European sports. Okay, what what's the fandom? What's this like? What's that like? How are the major leagues, broadcast over where you are? And I it is interesting. But you said you did, but it is interesting. You said a lot of the players you play with, not all. So that is interesting. Not all of them are that close-minded. I think that's more of an American cultural issue. I think the closed-mindedness. Hello, Mr. Avery, not the real Sean Avery, of course. This is a parody account, Sean Avery, long-time subscriber from Vancouver. I think Carl Dubas is under a lot of pressure with the core, those five players on the big money. There is a lot of pressure to make progress this year, and any failure to do so, I think, it's like Mark Bergevin with the Canadians is now out of a job. I think failure to win a round again, and failure to get out the first round would be devastating because they've spent so much money. And then there's the question mark with Austin Matthews. Will he actually end up in Arizona? Because there's a lot of speculation that the Coyotes, once they after this year, I know they're going to be temporarily housed in the ASU, Arizona State University rink, while the Tempe arena is built. There is a lot of speculation that Austin Matthews may go to Arizona, back to his home state to play. But I do think Carl Dubas, a lot of pressure, a lot of money tied up with a handful of players, and a slowly increasing cap. Plus, you've got the escrow and the retained salary from the 2020, 2021 lockdown kind of restricted seasons. Not a lot of cap room to maneuver with. And yeah, there is the pressure is building. The pressure is building, and the fact that they haven't got out the first round for nearly a generation now, it's the fan base is expectant. I think the Tavares contract is the one for me. When they got him from the Islanders as a free agent and paid him what they did, that's I think added further pressure onto Carl Dubas. He's on his third coach now as GM. You've had Babcock. You've got Sheldon Keefe. I think who was before Babcock? Is it his third coach or is it his second coach? Sheldon Keefe might be. Okay, it's his second. No, it's his second coach because Shanahan hired Babcock. But there's been times, yeah, I'm not sure he will get fired, but I think the pressure increases massively with that core to succeed. Because while they've got some good young talented prospects coming through, um, I'm not sold on the Marlies, winning the AHL a couple of years ago, their version of the Stanley Cup. There's definitely talent in the Marlies system to then bring into the Leaf system. So their player development in the AHL is brilliant. It's making sure that transition and that success from the AHL transitions to the NHL, and also tying up 4 or 5 players with 70% of their cap is ridiculous. They are in cap hell. I would. I think the pressure increases on Carl Dubas and Shanahan if they do not get out the first round. I wouldn't say Tavares is overrated. I think the way it ended at the Islanders has he's now got a mixed reputation. I think he's more of a setup guy than a finisher. He's more of the guy who sets up the play for his wingers. He's a good player. I wouldn't say he's overrated. Nylander, well, which one? There's Willie Nylander. Well, he got his brother as well. The Nylander brothers, much like their father, I think are underrated. To make it to play one game in the NHL, you're in the top 2% of players on an annual year. right? And then the amount of players ever to play in the NHL, you're in the top 1% of players who are registered to play the game at any level. So just to make one appearance in the NHL, you're in that top percent. Um, think of the amount of players who play around the world in semi-pro and professional leagues who've never made the NHL, who play for the love of the game. Some of them are equally as talented, in my opinion, for their skill set or their physicality or whatever, but they've only got that one attribute. They haven't got the all-round game. Just play one game in the NHL, let alone 1,000 games for a team. But yes, Dan, apart from your baseball buddies and teammates, it'll be interesting with your job or with your, you said college as well, your classmates. It'll be interesting, your non-baseball friends, what um, they enjoy about sport if they are sports fans. It'll be interesting to get some of them subscribed and in a live stream, and especially on the weekend because there's a lot of sport this weekend that I'm looking forward to. So I'll be doing a lot of sports content this weekend. There's Africa Cup of Nations semi-finals and final. Six Nations kicks off. You've got the FA Cup fourth round. There's a lot of sport over the next week or so to get my teeth into. And of course, the Major League Baseball lockout continues. So we'll see if there's a break in the deadlock in the talks and if they're constructive talks, and if we can end this lockout, because I honestly think it's more damaging for league than not. Uh, but yeah, I think in regards to the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think Carl Dubas, the pressure ramps up. Great regular season team, no doubt on that. Defensively, okay, Campbell's now coming to his own as a goaltender. Proved it a little bit in the playoffs, a little bit. A normal playoff run and a normal full season. Be interested to see how Campbell does in the playoffs. Um, Defensively, still not 100% sold on the Maple Leafs with their defensive structures and their toughness as well, their grit. You need those kind of tough players who are willing to throw in the big hits, shut down players who'll be willing to drop the gloves occasionally, um, throw some punches. I don't think they've got enough of that. They haven't got that steely resolve to get nasty when they have to, and to fight back when they're being bullied a little bit. And there are better teams than them in the league as well. In both conferences, there are teams that are more complete. So they're not, because they've tied so much money up in their salary cap with a handful of players. That does cause problems with team balance and structure. Um, and while they've got great scoring talent defensively and on the defensive side of the game, two-way side of the game, when they turn the puck over, when they're under pressure, the pressure situations in the playoffs, they've come up short. Not getting out the first round, it is a concern. Um, so yeah, the mentality of the players, the mental toughness of the players, the physical toughness of the players. There are question marks about the structure of the team, how the team's set up to play. And I think it's also a legacy of bad ownership in years past. They haven't had that consistent playoff appearances until recently. The team's been badly run for many, many years now. It's well run off the ice, behind the scenes with the structures. It's the on ice product. While it's great going forward, it's not so good going the other way defensively. Yeah, I'm still not sold on the Maple Leafs, although they're having a very good regular season yet again. Um, when they lose badly. When they win well. They're a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team. A lot of skill in there, not enough grit. There's not enough players who are just a defender's defenseman who's willing just to leather everything in front of him. And there's that fourth line doesn't, apart from Wayne Simmons, there's not a lot of. They've lost Kadri, they've lost Martin, they lost Komarov. Um, uh, So they've lost that steely grit and that gnarliness. They've lost Phaneuf over the years, and these were tough players. Maybe not the best players, but they were tough players who. And Wayne Simmons could be a first liner at another team. Could play on the first line at another team, first or second line on another team. He's getting a reduced role in the team in his minutes, which I think impacts the team as well. Wayne Simmons, Wayne Simmons at Philadelphia, first or second line, without question. So there is an imbalance. They're too top heavy with their skill players, and it's not evenly distributed. You can't roll four lines in that sense because you haven't really got a shutdown line. Um, and that's a problem. Did YouTube get rid of the timestamps next to comments on live streams? They aren't showing up. I just put it on. I think I don't know. Let me have a look. Let me have a look on my. I can toggle timestamps. Let's toggle time. There you go. I've put the timestamps back on. There you go. That'd be my bad on the settings. Um, I didn't toggle the timestamps. That's my bad. I think you can toggle your settings where the three dots are. If you click on that, I think you can toggle the settings to put timestamps back in. That's my mistake. I completely forgot that I turned that off. That's on me. But yeah, you can toggle it on and off if you click. You go with your cursor by live chat and top chat and all that. I click live chat, so all comments come up in order. And where the three dots are, that's a drop down menu. If you go on there and click toggle timestamp, you can put the timestamp. I think it depends on yeah. I think they did remove it as an automatic, and it's now optional for you, the viewer, and me, the uploader, to put timestamps on. But I put timestamps on for me. But no, I'll be more than happy for you to Dan. Apart from some of your baseball teammates being very insular in their NFL Major League Baseball, it'll be interesting to see what other your work colleagues and your other college friends and family, if they are interested in sport, get them interested. Recommend the channel. Let's see if they want to view some of the content. I will admit, I've been rewatching some of my old videos, and I'm very, very critical of them. I actually cringe at watching some of my old content, how the channel's evolved, and where we are now. So it's nice. I think I revisit some of my old videos have aged quite well. Some have aged quite badly. But yeah, I'm going to call it a night because it's nearly midnight where I am. So I'm 5 hours ahead. So it's early evening for you guys, but for me, I'm ready for bed. I've got to be up early in the morning for work. But yeah, no, I've appreciated obviously all the questions, all the comments, what we've discussed. We've discussed a lot of important things. We've gone longer than I thought. I was only going to be going for an hour. I've gone 2 hours and 42 minutes longer than I thought. So I've definitely gone on a bit longer than I realised. But yeah, the timestamps, I just toggle them back on and off. I'll set that up in my settings. I know they've changed how live streams work a little bit with the new YouTube Create Studio in the last. They constantly tweaked the studio. So I've tweaked my live stream settings a little bit, which you notice. You've got to be subscribed for so long before you can post a comment. I've put the slow mode on to avoid spamming. And even so, Spunk Jones, that means, has been subscribed for more than 5 minutes to actually make a comment. So I've tried to change some of the how long you've got to be subscribed for, and the slow mode to avoid spam. and that means Spunk Jones has subscribed to the channel. So even changing the subscription kind of rules in regards to the channel, idiots still manage to get on, and it's absolutely frustrating. I've been watching a few other channels do live streams lately, and they put in the same things where they put the subscription rules where you've got to be subscribed for so long, and you've got a the slow mode and all that, and it's so frustrating. I've had enough of the spammers and the trolls in the comment section. It's frustrating um, when you have those idiots who just try and ruin it. But yes, I'm going to head off to bed. I've got an early day, early morning, um, and I will obviously have some more content for you tomorrow. Obviously, there's Africa Cup of Nations match tomorrow evening, first semi-final, and of course the Major League Baseball will be entering its second month of lockout. And we know that the talks have resumed, and there's some positive murmurings coming out of both camps. Uh, oh, my rugby football scoreboards. Yeah, I don't get the whiteboard out because the way my flat is laid out, it's not really conducive for getting the whiteboard out and faffing around because my flat is south facing, so the sunlight just comes straight through my window and my back door because I'm on a ground floor flat. And I don't have a lot of space where my sofa and my table are. My table's there, my sofa's over there. And as you can see, where is it? Where is it? There's the far wall over there. So, and behind me is my wardrobe there, and my far wall's just over there. So there's not a lot of that's my front door just there. So there's not a lot of room, uh, in the flat to get the whiteboard out and to faff around and do that. I mean, I might try um, this weekend do a little bit of an experiment with the video, but yeah. So we shall see, and hopefully, if we hit 1,000, we can obviously engage the super chat, which will obviously help with the channel's growth and me financially as well, because at the moment finances are it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant viewing looking at my bank account. The summer being off for 2.5 months off work is definitely the bank account is um is feeling it. And it's not great at the moment financially. So yes, if we can engage the super chat and get there, that'd be beneficial to me because I do this just in my free time. But yeah, um, the get the scoreboard, the old whiteboard out. The lighting isn't in the flat in the evening isn't great, and in the daytime it's just blinding sunlight. So I've got to have a few little tweaks with the flat, but we will obviously have to see how that all plays out in the coming weeks. I'll try to do an experiment. I think at the weekend, um, let's have a little experiment. Maybe Saturday, maybe Friday evening. Do a little experiment with the whiteboard and over there probably get one of the chairs out, put the whiteboard up, and have a little experiment. Get the laptop over there. Got an extension cable, so I could, but it's about experimenting and see how it works with the lighting. It's more the lighting that's the issue rather than and rearranging the space. So that's a planning up here, but uh, we'll see how that works out. I haven't got the whiteboard out whilst in the last just over a year and a half I've lived here, so it's a bit of experimentation and a bit of moving things around, but we'll see. But anyway, thank you very much, guys. And that's an experiment that we can obviously put in place at some point and have a little work with. But yeah, thank you very much for your questions this evening. Obviously, some very tough stuff we've had to talk about, which obviously has been a very fast moving situation with the Mason Greenwood situation, and there's obviously more to come with that. So watch this space. He may be charged and remanded in custody. So we'll see what happens with Mason Greenwood. It's not looking good. So that's an interesting one. Benjamin Mendy as well. We don't know what his trial date's going to be with Benjamin Mendy. So there's a lot of negative press coming out about antics to do with with players, which is not a good look. But yes, thank you very much for all your questions. And yes, yeah, just keep your eyes peeled for more match reviews, because we've got both African Cup of Nations semi-finals, we've got the Six Nations, we've got the FA Cup fourth round. I will try my best to watch as much of those live games as possible. There's going to be some clashes where I just can't watch 3 games at the same time. That is going to happen. There's going to be a clash where there's a rugby match, football, international football on at the same time, and I won't be able to obviously cover all of that at the same time. So I'll try my best, but thanks for all the support, and hopefully we hit the 1,000 subscribers very, very soon. So for that, thank you for all your support, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.